sitting silently at the table, puckering her lips as she drummed her fingers. The man under her glare fidgeting uncomfortably as her gaze bore into him. The rest of the people at the table looking uncomfortable, Qui-Gon raising an eyebrow as he could feel the irritation of the woman clearly through the Force. He however was unable to gauge her through it. Padme was quiet as they waited, all too aware of her close friend's anger as she silently gazed towards her. Shmi herself was unbelievably nervous as her adoptive daughter glared unrelentlessly at her lover. You love her, Kanye growled out as she leaned into the sweating scruffy man. Owen Lars, being 20 years old, tried to keep himself busy as he awaited his father's response. Of course I do, I love her with all my hair, I have since I first laid eyes on her in the shopping district, Klieg reassured as Kanye scoffed. Even though being almost a fully fledged Sith, she still saw Shmi as her mother. And any man getting between her mother and father was a threat, even though she was fully aware her adoptive father and master held no such feeling towards Shmi. TCH, whatever you say, Kanye growled out as she both sensed the sincerity of the man's words, but refused to believe him. I think you should be nicer to Dad. After all, he is your dad too now, right? Owen stated neutrally as Kanye snapped her attention to him. Qui-Gon taking note of the rattling of the kitchenware, as he paid rapt attention to her body movements and actions. Hold your opinions to yourself, Brad. You may be the son of mother's lover, but that does not mean I must tolerate you. So shut up and eat, Kanye growled out, as Anakin tried to be as meek as possible, Padme rubbing her friend's shoulders to soothe her. Qui-Gon himself was worried. He could sense the Force stripping from the woman in every sense of the word. The same could be said of the boy beside him. What worried him, however, is that he could feel the dark side of the Force when Kanye grew angry. Even though she's untrained, she shows considerable power, but she's uncontrolled. Her emotions have never been tempered. How did we miss her? And not only her, but her brother, Qui-Gon thought as he soon focused on the youngest sibling. Kanye, please, Shmi pleaded as the girl looked to her mother, shame flashing across her face as she slowly calmed down and stared at the table. At that moment, the maids brought their meals from within the kitchen, placing one before every member at the table before making themselves scarce. With the people at the table picking up their utensils, digging into their meals, Kanye melted into her food, often eating the rations in the stores of her interceptor. Are you a Jedi? Anakin suddenly asked to draw attention from the room, pressing Qui-Gon for an answer. A Jedi? What makes you think I'm a Jedi, young man? Qui-Gon asked, knowing how uncomfortable the boy must have been. Oh, come and I saw your lightsaber clipped around your waist when we were walking here, Anakin reasoned as Shmi smiled lightly. Qui-Gon looked at Anakin for a moment before smiling lightly and producing his lightsaber from his robe. Perhaps I killed a Jedi and took it from his body, Qui-Gon reasoned as he indulged Anakin. Nah, nobody can kill a Jedi, Anakin rebuked heatedly, holding a superior smirk. After putting the facts together, what brings you out here, hunting enemies of the Order? Or perhaps you're liberating the Hutt cartels from their tyranny across the Outer Rim? Merely passing through, Qui-Gon said defensively as Anakin looked slightly out at the bleak reply. And unfortunately, we must hurry along, we cannot remain. Nobody stays here for long, not even father likes being here. Kanye, when will father be back? Anakin asked solemnly as he looked towards his big sister, everyone else growing interested at the missing family members. Father is a very busy man, Ani. You must understand. He is one of, if not the most important person I know. But I do know he thinks of you frequently, Ani. And remember, no matter where you are. If you wish it hard enough to see him. He'll be there. Kanye soothed her sibling as he smiled sadly. Padme's and Qui-Gon's interest peaked while Shmi looked on sadly. Anakin, I'm sorry, I don't have the heart to tell you the truth. It'll hurt you too much, Shmi thought as she smiled sadly at Anakin. Something that Qui-Gon didn't miss, but did not press on. Do you have any stories of what it's like out there? Anakin asked in childlike curiosity as Qui-Gon rubbed his beard and began telling a long-time story between him and his master and one of their adventures, with Anakin leaning in and listening with obvious wonder. With Knox Athena kneeling within the circular sanctum, the black monolith housing Zildrog at his back and two urns open and ready to be used by the lone kneeling figure. The writhing mode of viscous fluid, attempting to leap and bind with the ancient entity. 12 shade-like creatures hovered around the creator of the ritual they were performing. The 12 shades disembodied voices whispering throughout the darkening room. Sulig Aspel Tave Vale Nu Gaze Jez Tave Cord, snatching Sulig Tave Clutches Iv Eternity Urhak, Zonatura Caxi Stolen Caxi Val returned, Vi Fate Secleti Beauty Sphissuis Visums Valia Kars Suli Nuonan, Screamer Didixos Onatura Caxi Stolen Caxi Val returned. As the mantra was repeated, Nox removed the cloak he wore, the viscous fluid defying gravity as I rose from the pit, the fluid moving in a tendril-like formation, a single point snaking its way to him. As the two met, the fluid gently touched his back, a cold sensation running across his senses before the material suddenly lurched itself into his body, disappearing from the outside world, as a large portion remained and fell back into the pit, no longer writhing, almost shying away from the man for the time being. As the shades continued to chant, Nox held out his arms adjacent to his body, as malevolent energy coated his body, eyes glowing, mouth wide in a silent scream. If anybody was to look, they would have watched the fluid reappear within his open maw, as Nox leaned forward and ejected the material from his mouth into the closest urn. The ectoplasm-like material transferred itself into the other urn of its own without prompting once it started to overflow from the largest urn. With the shades now circling in closer, Nox finally finished ejecting the fluid as he sat himself back up, the 12 screaming into him bar one which made its way to his front, the astral shade leaning its head to the side before reaching forward and examining his face before fixing a stray hair upon his face. The shade then slowly evaporated and joined its brethren within his body with nothing but silence. With the royal party, that must be awesome, to see the galaxy, Anakin said as he slumped into his seat, a brooding face being made. I've seen enough of this galaxy for 10 lifetimes. It's an honest life out here, Anakin, Shmi interjected as she tried calming her hair trade, not wanting Anakin to leave. Have you ever noticed anything strange around little Anakin here? To this question of Qui-Gon's, everyone at the table chuckled lightly, including Kanye, who nearly laughed. Strange, while little Anakin here is the biggest weirdo of this half of the hemisphere. He's great with machines, intelligent, mature beyond his years, and gullible as all living hack and way to trusting for his own good. Owen laughed out as Anakin looked a dejected look. Also best pilot I've ever seen of my life. This kid here, Klieg laughed as he pointed at Anakin with his fork, could give the best pilots in the galaxy a run for their money. I don't know where he gets it. Your pilot Padme asked for the first time of the night. Isn't it dangerous? But when I'm in danger, or I really concentrate, I feel this sensation take over me. I get nudges on what to do, whispers or images. It tells me what to do and I do it. I'm always safe when that happens. It feels good too, Anakin admitted, much to Qui-Gon's surprise as he closed his jaw slowly. What do you know of the Force? Qui-Gon asked as Anakin made a thinking gesture. Isn't it the tool that you use? Kanye put in as she continued eating, placing an odd-colored meat into her mouth before chewing. Yes. The Force permeates all living and non-living things. It surrounds all and guides us to a better tomorrow. There are a select few of us, very few, that are able to sense and use the Force, and I am of the belief that little Anakin and Kanye are able to use it. Qui-Gon reasoned as Anakin looked to Qui-Gon and Kanye in awe. You mean you want to take them with you? Shmi mumbled sadly as she looked at her son. Kanye is unfortunately much too old, and even I acknowledge that, but there just may be a chance they would accept Anakin as a Jedi, if that's okay with you. That is, Qui-Gon soothed as Padme looked at Anakin for a few moments before he looked at her, catching each other's gaze before going back to their food. May I have some time to think about it? Shmi asked as the Jedi Master nodded. Anakin, why don't you take a look at their ship with me and Klieg tomorrow? Maybe help them out as much as we can. Owen asked. Anakin smiled widely as Qui-Gon and Padme accepted the idea. Is that what I think it is? Master Nihilus asked as Nox walked through the halls of eternity, with the urns sealed, whilst he carried them towards one of the many vacant rooms aboard the colossal ship. It is indeed. I have a voice in my head I want out, and this is the best way, Nox stated as they turned down another hallway, Nihilus following behind in curiosity. After a few minutes they came towards a room and the door slid open. A large bed featured, but other than that and a single crate, the room was unused. You'd better geodang appreciate this, Nox growled as he walked to the crate and opened it. A form-fitting grey and gold outfit within, along with a lightsaber, boots and gloves and 3 jewels placed neatly together. My lord, who does that belong to? Nihilus asked as Nox silenced him and knelt down. Is this really happening? The voice asked as Nox didn't bother replying. Instead he permeated pure Force energy, as the lids slid off both urns. The viscous fluid rising from the urns and spilling into the crate with glee, Nox releasing the pent-up energy straight into the crate and fluid, soon followed by unintelligible wailing through the Force as if it were in pain. Nihilus stepped back and hid in awe as he slowly started to feel a second presence through the Force, flowing from the crate that started cracking. Is this how it happened with me? He thought as the grey clothing wrapped itself around the rapidly transforming liquid. The lightsaber flowing to the top, and clipping itself to the sash worn around the waist of the outfit. The black liquid soon formed what appeared to be bones, muscle structure wrapping around the bones and organs forming, brown hair follicles, appearing on the rapidly forming entity's flesh, her form soon solidifying. Her creamy skin being hidden from view almost entirely as she knelt within the crate. Her long brown hair flowing from the cowl of her outfit, as her eyes slowly fluttered open. Nox himself stood up as the urns crumbled to dust. Monster Nihilus says he felt the woman through the Force. I wouldn't be able to beat her without the mask, and even then. Welcome back, Valen. Ugh, what hit me? A feminine voice drawled out as she slowly rose from her bed, the sheets wrapping around her nude figure, as she intently studied the contents of the room with her yellow-eyed glare. Flashback. Welcome back, Valen. Looking up towards the voice, Valen looked into the black lenses of the Emperor's mask. Slightly licking her lips, she sprung up from the floor and pressed herself against his figure, attempting to press her assets into his and gain his affections. Snaking her arms around his neck, she noticed as his arms rose, her eyes widening in joy at the thought of him reciprocating her affections. Only for her world to erupt in pain mixed with euphoria as red flashed across her vision, the scent ozone and burnt hair assaulting her senses before everything went black as she crumbled to the floor. rising from the unfamiliar bed in silence, the sheets sliding off of her, her right breasts bouncing freely as she walked towards the table in the corner with her folded outfit placed atop a dot. Grabbing her grey leggings and sliding them around her ankles. Bending over without a care in the world, not fearing if anyone was to suddenly enter the room. She took her time with getting dressed, marveling the feeling of a real body once more, the sensations pricking at her skin as noise assaulted her ears. I must find a way to adequately thank him. Valen licked her lips as she slid her top on, and pulled the cowl over her head, before placing the 3 jewels upon her head. Cat, tell me Scorpio, what is it capable of? Nox asked as they stood upon the observation deck on one of Cat's shipyards, a single colossal ship being quickly assembled as Scorpio herself managed the construction. Scorpio looked on proudly as the skeleton of the ship was swarmed upon by odd-looking droids with 6 arms, with 4 of those arms having high-density lasers, while the others having 3-fingered arms, each droid propelled around by 3 rotating thrusters. Thousands upon thousands of these pulled parts the ship within the Dyson Sphere's shipyard. The Eternity was the vanguard of the Eternal Fleet, and a symbol of our empire for both power and splendor. I am of the belief that the ship is outdated even with its armament, and there should be something greater to serve such a title, Scorpio stated, as the odd droids brought pieces of the upgrades through the shining entrances to the planet. But through thousands of years' worth of absence, I was able to oversee the reverse engineering of Grey Rakuten, Killik and other species technologies. I have overseen multiple leaps and bounds in our advancements. But with your requests to have not only the Starforge technology analyzed, but to study of the construct known as Centerpoint Station. I have devised and integrated several upgrades into the skeletal designs of the Eternity's blueprints, since it is the only shell capable of fitting such drastic size changes and equipment, Scorpio explained as the shell of the new ship was shown, looking like a much larger version of the flagship. The ship's size will be extended from roughly 3,000 meters long to 7,500. The width will now also be 2,500 meters across. Have 2 hyperdrives, 6 thrusters, 2 of which are capital-sized thrusters. Along the center of the ship we have our first use of hypergate technology. The most recently constructed and deployed warships, several hundred of unique design, currently carry the corresponding gate which will activate itself and leave the warships, and construct itself behind the warship at a safe distance, and will make the necessary formation upon receiving its activation via the Eternity's command and will allow for near instant access to a specific warship's location. The new sanctum, which will still house Ildrog's core, will contain a termination procedure to eliminate that thing whenever you are to order it. Along the bottom of the ship also now sports a rapid deployment port for the ICAT war droids, which will also serve as their storage, upgrade area, and charge station. The floor below them will fold out and allow for instant deployment in any situation needed. The evolved quarters and throne room will remain the same, but they will now have 4 Skytrooper factories deployment zones at their entrances. Incus protection is needed. The front of the ship has been reinforced. Incus ramming is ordered. The Omni cannon will remain the same, but will be upgraded from a charge time of 12 seconds to 8 seconds before rapid fire. The 4 frontal cannons have been upgraded and changed to 6 cannons. And the 120 turbo laser batteries are now accompanied by 80 ion cannons for shields and electronic disruption, and 60 magnetic accelerator cannons, for after an enemy's shields have been shut down. 2 new hangars have been added to the sides of the ship, and will carry a legion of fighters, and 6 shuttles each. 18 missile silos have been integrated to the sides of the new flagship. 6 contain Emperor-leasing missiles, 6 thermonuclear, and 6 proton torpedoes for each side of the ship. Each pod is capable of rapid fire, though that will quickly drain the nearby sun generator. Speaking of sun generators, the number has been changed from 1 to 4 sun generators. And 6 smaller variants with triple the output have been retrofitted into powering the newly developed Quasar cannon, which will serve as a last line of defense if all surrounding support vessels have been destroyed. These sun generators are continuously maintained by builder droids. The Quasar cannon will have 1 charged battery at a time. A single shot will contain the pent-up energy of the sun generators, focused into a battery 1 meter in length and 2 meters in width. At the head of the battery will be a sphere 30 centimeters in diameter, and when fired all energy contained within the battery is condensed into the sphere, before it will be fired a tenth of the speed of light. The released energy will have an output equal to or far exceeding 10 dodesillion joules. The ship will then be forced into a pre-planned hyperspace jump immediately after firing to ensure survival. Any fleet vessel will avoid the corresponding firing location for a week, before a Skytrooper unit with builders from ICAF will survey the damage done, and begin repairs to any surviving location. For a quicker charge time, the ship is designed to store multiple volleys of quasar shots. When 1 battery is charged, it is shifted out with an empty battery, and stored above the cannon, until the cannon is to fire. Once all batteries are at 100%, the 6 sun generators will become inactive, until another battery is to be charged. The batteries take roughly 12 seconds to be switched out and do so automatically, so shot is always ready, and requires no outside intervention. If my calculations are correct, it will take 2 months to charge all the current batteries to full power, if the ship is dormant, and diverts all power to do so. This cannon will require your express permission to fire, and will be controlled from either your throne on the implants within your head, and the cannon itself is located below and behind a forward-facing hangar on the bottom of the ship about halfway along, and will have the thickest armor of any place upon the ship. Only you and those you trust will know the existence of this cannon aboard the ship, and are not shown on blueprints. The charged batteries will be accessible through the vault, if they are needed to be inspected. The ship's shields have triple the output and a third of the charge time required, and is strong enough to survive impact with another vessel of equal or larger size, and will allow for you to continue straight through the enemy ship, without impeding the ship's speed. The ship also contains the fleet's cloaking technology. To ensure this ship's secrecy, if a vessel of origins not pertaining to the Empire of Sakuel is within identification distance of the flagship, there is an artificial energy field permeating from the ship that has the capability to interrupt light speed travel, and will force ships out of hyperspace, and ensure they are unable to use their hyperdrives. This, however, affects all ships within the designated radius around the flagship. Within the forward-facing hangar will now sit 10,000 builder units, which will repair any damage done to the ship, and will cannibalize enemy ships for resources. Scorpio explained as Nox grew quiet, looking at his new flagship, which has now doubled in overall size, becoming a true monster for a flagship, as the new outer shell was applied and melded into place, making a much larger flagship with a more elegant, streamlined appearance, along with being a technological terror. Prepare the subjugation to have the 700 newly constructed warships to leave with it in 2 hours. Get a skeleton crew of droids to fly the subjugation before it is to have a human crew, and Scorpio. You've outdone yourself, Nox remarked as a vicious smirk grew upon his face as he left the room, with Scorpio staring at the colossal ship, more than capable of waging war on its own. The subjugation, an appropriate name, Scorpio mumbled before going ahead with her orders. With the royal party, Anakin had his eyes closed as he rested in the Skyhopper, Klieg and Owen in the front, as they headed towards the coordinates given to them by the Jedi Master. A toolkit sat next to him as he rested. Qui-Gon, Padme and the others stayed at the homestead and converse with Shmi. C-3PO clanked around the house, barley staying together as it tried to learn. Excuse me, I have to take this, Qui-Gon stated as he stood up and went to the exit of the house, missing Kanye's hidden glare and clenched hands. Master, from what this is saying, the DNA results come back as inconclusive for both, which is curious. However, I was able to get a read on their midichlorian counts. The girl, what did you call her? Kanye, her midichlorian could is over 19,000. That's more than Master Yoda, but the boys his is over 20,000. Master, nobody in the order has a count even close to these two, Obi-Wan stated in awe over the comm unit, as he stared at the analysis unit aboard the shuttle. Master, what does this mean? I don't know, but I have to talk to Shmi, and I want to meet this mysterious father of theirs, Qui-Gon said as he deactivated his unit and stared out into the sandy dunes with a contemplative look, reaching to the surrounding area with the Force. Something isn't right, Qui-Gon mumbled before turning to head inside. Standing atop a plateau far away from the royal ship and homestead, a silver ship of foreign design had landed, 3 drones flying out for the ramp before flying in separate directions. The black-cloaked figure stepped down the ramp slowly before looking over the land, crossing his arms and scowling. My lord, a Darksider has been sighted on the plains of Tatooine. I believe this to be the false apprentice you speak of, Atlas stated, as he knelt within the Zakuulan throne room, as Nox stood stock still as he gazed at the city far below. You have done well bringing this information to me. I will have 3 warships cloaked over Tatooine. You will be on one and tail them to wherever their destination is. If the royal party is in more danger than they can deal with, you will activate the hypergate technology of your warship, and I will deal with it myself upon my arrival. Nox ordered, his gaze falling upon the hulking abomination that nodded towards him. As you wish, my master. Lagrath accepted as he stood and quickly left to fulfill his lord's orders, hissing being heard as the throne room's doors closed shut. Bring them in, Nox ordered, making his way to his throne before sitting and relaxing into the soft seat. With another hiss was heard as 3 of the old Zakuulan politicians were dragged into the room by a troop of knights to force them to kneel. Tell me, why do my knights tell me if you attempted to bribe them to get into my throne room? Nox asked as his gaze paralyzed all whom fell under. We simply wish to speak with you, my lord, a pretty brown-haired woman stated as she gulped, sweat running down her neck. The other 2 were horrified as her head exploded, brain matter coating everyone close by as her headless corpse fell to the ground. You're a monster, knights, do you not see the beast you serve, the horrid creature to which you've sold your souls? An aged male stated as he took out a blaster from a hole in his stomach, hollowed out with prosthetics, and shot at the Emperor. His eyes widened in horror as the bolt stopped halfway towards the young-looking Emperor, who rose his hand from his throne ever so slightly, as his fingers crackled with red energy. The man had no time to react as a torrent of red lightning surged forward and struck the man. His skin flaking as he fell to the ground in a silent scream, before he was turned to nothing but ash which spread as a thin layer across the ground. Nox looked at the still bolt as he moved it to hover directly in front of the final, youngest female member of the politicians whom was hyperventilating, her heart rate easily heard by the Dark Lord. Now will you tell me why you joined them, young one, he ordered as tears leaked down her face. But they said you were a demon, an ancient entity come to destroy our glorious home, and that you corrupted our valiant knights, and that if we make them see reason, then we could save our home, the young woman quickly stated as she panicked, going number as she told her story. Go, you were tricked and manipulated by those whom you trusted. However, if you even think of turning on me again after this, well, I don't have to say anything else, Nox stated as he stood from his throne and stood once more gazing out to the stars, as the plasma bolt fizzled into nothingness in front of the young woman, whom was dragged out by the night's dot. Molten yellow eyes, once cerulean blue, once more gazed at the burning landscape of Orbital. Smoke, rising from smoldering craters, ash all that remains of numerous creatures that once lived. Brown hair flowing from his cowl and black robes as he clasped his white mask in his right hand, and lightsaber clipped to his sash, as he stood atop one of the many towers of the dread fortress. Lord Nicholas, a transmission from His Majesty, one of his knights, knelt as a hollow disc hovered from the man's hand, before a blue silhouette sprung into existence as Nicholas himself knelt. Your Majesty, Anakin has been recaptured. We performed orbital bombardment and eliminated most of the surface-dwelling wildlife. We made sure to avoid 2 fortresses before sweeping through and capturing all strongholds. Upon my return to the system, and the atmosphere settled down and became safe for entry, Nicholas reported as he remained knelt, Nox rubbing his chin in the hologram. You have done well, Lucille. As of right now, Lagrath is en route to monitor Kanye and the Darksiders stalking them, Nox relayed as Nicholas looked up. My lord, would you like me to eliminate this interloper? Nicholas asked as Nox shook his head. Kanye should be more than capable to defend herself and Anakin if anything is to happen. With Lagrath and Kanye, there is no need for more protection. No, that is not what I need from you. There is a warship en route to your location which has been retrofitted with our new hypergate technology. You are to take this vessel as your new flagship, and are to link up with my capital ship in the Nathema system. Once you arrive, you are to meet me aboard my ship, where I can give you your orders in person, Nox ordered as Nicholas nodded while the hologram shut off. Prepare my ship, Nicholas ordered as he once more gazed out towards the molten planet. At once, my lord, the knight stated before quickly departing. I wonder, was this once a beautiful lush planet before it was destroyed by those that abused their power? Lucille thought as his new vessel entered the system. Aboard the subjugation. Tell me, Scorpio, what is our current capacity? Nox asked Scorpio through cybernetic his implants, as the droid stood beside his throne while he sat, information running through his head as he went over the ship's schematics. The quasar cannon will take 1 month, 27 days and 4 hours, before all batteries are full charge. We have 7,000 Skytrooper units stored within the factories, and more than enough resources to produce triple that amount if needed. We are at 90% crew capacity. We have 20 years worth of supplies, and are producing more as we speak within the hydroponic labs. Reactors are running at full capacity. Morale is at an all-time high. The escort ships are also at full capacity. Your newly completed X-70B has been retrofitted with hypergate technology, emitters have been equipped, and the cloaking technology of the Empire has been remade and added to your personal starship. Food stores are at full capacity and is ready to deploy at your leisure, Scorpio stated as she gazed forward, their mental communication noticed by none, as the monstrous subjugation appeared in the Nathema system. Very good. If there is anything I've missed or something occurs, let me know at once, Nox ordered as he went over the current data provided to him from the ships of the fleet. Rerouting several patrol routes of the fleet with his implants as 8 ships broke formation and headed off to their newly assigned routes. Valen slowly lowered herself into her spa, her toned physique and firm breasts disappearing under the bubbling waters, a sigh escaping her lips as she relaxed. Her gaze drifted towards the theme visible though the large window beside her as she began to wash herself. You hate me, for all I did, Valen thought as she felt the man she was obsessed with through the Force, his terror-inducing presence soothing her as she basked in the sheer unrivaled power that radiated from his being. Would you accept me for who I am, who I was made to be? Would you return what I feel for you? Would you find my groveling over you pathetic, or would it endear me to you? Would you look at me with contempt as I fulfill your every wish? Do I, my love, even appear on your radar as I do everything within my power to appease you, to earn your attention and affections? I know you know of how I feel, after all you're no fool. Is this a test I have to pass to be given a sliver chance? Valen continued her musings as she finished washing herself before crossing her arms onto the side of the spa, and resting her chin atop her arms, as she gazed towards the stars, determination burning in her sulfuric eyes, as she clutched the connection they shared through the Force, and actively made it stronger. One day, you'll see me just as I see you, and then, finally we will belong to each other. You the Eternal Emperor, power incarnate, and me, the monster made out of fear of another, high justice of the Eternal Empire, and you're to be lover, Valen fantasized as her thoughts began to grow in intensity, before she began to stimulate herself in the bath, her moans echoing through her quarters without care of anyone hearing her. Nihilus stared at the absolutely monstrous ship appearing in the viewport of his flagship, several cannons swiveling in his direction as his ship was scanned. You are approved for docking. Our lord awaits you within the throne room. A synthetic voice sounded over the speakers, as the cannons of the hulking monstrosity turned away as Nihilus's flagship joined the escorts, the crew openly gazing in awe at the ship several kilometers in length. I will be there shortly, Nihilus reported as he began the trip to his shuttle, one last look outwards before the elevator door closed. Kanye fumbled her lightsaber in her pale hands, her presence in the Force muted as much as possible, thanks to her father's teachings. The weak hound outside is nothing. A pathetic failure from a full Sith. I could take him, both the Jedi and all the guards. But that would interfere with my mission, and father's orders. Kanye mused as she contemplated and fantasized about running. He lightsabered the pathetic worm's chest. Kanye looked eastward through the estate towards the Jedi Master, currently conversing with Shmi, before looking in the direction of Anakin and the Nubian shuttle. Is there something I can assist you with, my queen? Kanye asked, as she hid her lightsaber and turned towards Padme. The two friends' gazes meeting, the queen's worrying look and Kanye's questioning one. Shmi, I have to ask, what is their father like? Qui-Gon asked as Shmi became quiet, her eyes calculated as she looked at him. He was wealthy, handsome, could have convinced anyone to do anything. He came, like a savior from the stars, and rescued me. Kanye and Anakin are blessed to have him. He often isn't here, he is a busy man, but still provides anything we would ever need. I may have fallen out of love with him, but he will always have a place in my heart. Master Jedi, what do you ask me this for? Shmi asked as she looked across the sands of Tatooine. I'd like to meet him, Qui-Gon asked as Shmi didn't look his way, nor was she surprised. Perhaps you'll meet him one day. If Anakin does go with you, I'd wager he would contact you eventually, Shmi stated as she watched the skyhopper on the horizon, speeding towards the estate with her lover, his son and Anakin along with them. Laggarth gazed towards the sand-covered planet below. Remembering its once lush forests and oceans before the Rakuten Empire, as his warship completed its planetary scan. Begin monitoring the Skywalker estate and the royal shuttle. Notify me of everything. Make contact with Lady Kanye discreetly. Alert her of our status at once. The hulking creature growled out as its red eyes narrowed. Mother, father, I can't wait to watch you be rendered to nothingness, Laggarth mused before turning away and headed towards his quarters. Valen roared, violet waves of energy flowing from her body, as her yellow lightsaber shook in her hands. Dark insidious waves escaped her as her anger grew, instincts taking over as she stamped her feet and released a screech, cratering the ground as the room's lights flickered. Come, give me all you can, all you have, you know I can take it, Nox stated, across the room from the agitated woman, his lightsaber still connected to his belt without care. Valen became enraged furthermore as she leapt across the room, lightsaber held at a 90-degree angle as energy rippled across Nox's body and armor. As she reached the apex of her leap, Nox clenched his hands together as he hopped slightly before beginning to rotate clockwise. Upon completing a full circle, right arm bent and ready to intercept the strike, as he prepared to release a punch with his left. He's not going to dodge, Valen realized as she brought her lightsaber down upon the completion of her leap, worry beginning to etch onto her face. She was unprepared, as her lightsaber struck the defending right arm of her opponent, for the lightsaber to immediately shut off. The breath leaving her lungs as she folded over the left arm of her attacker, the strength behind the punch launching her across the room, rolling several times before coming to a stop on her stomach, attempting to catch her breath. She turned her head with a groan as she spotted Nox still in the same spot they had started in. Why, she growled in her thoughts as she hefted herself onto her elbows, attempting to stand. You won't be able to strike me with your lightsaber. It simply won't do anything. You have to think. Focus, Nox stated as his pitch-black lenses stared at the woman, watching her find her feet as the force rippled from her once more, a complicated gaze seen on her face. Without further words, her breathing steady, Valen launched forward. Sprinting at her emperor, as lightning danced across her arms as Nox himself mirrored the action, his mass low to the ground as they prepared to meet in the middle. Lightning dancing within the gaps of her fingers, Valen reached out towards Nox with her right hand outstretched. Nox himself dropped completely to the ground, Valen flying over him as he avoided her. Time seemed to slow for Valen, as she watched him slide under her. Her opponent now being completely behind her, Valen still stopping her momentum, Nox launched from the ground, rotating in the air like a corkscrew as his legs swung round. Valen's head and neck snapped to the left, as for a split second her vision blurred, losing her balance in the process, as her head collided with the floor. The foot which had connected to her head, now placed beside her head, as her opponent stood over her like a looming shadow. With the ringing in her ears slowly dying down, refocusing her eyes before she scowled, curling into herself before screaming in defiance, air pulse escaping from her as Nox brought up his arms, being knocked back a few feet as the wave of energy upturned everything not held down. What is her play? Nox mused as he felt her grasp him with the force. Let's see how this goes. Valen grinned savagely as she clenched her hand, Nox rising from the ground as she waved her hand towards the nearby wall, causing Nox to careen toward the unbelievably thick wall. Nox narrowed his eyes as he slammed into the durasteel wall, his armor leaving a large rent in the wall while he himself showed no damage, Valen repeating the process in the opposite direction with manic glee, before launching a volley of lightning at her target. Simple but effective, but not enough, the lightning impacting his armor, being completely absorbed before energy flowed through his being from the Force. Valen watched with wide eyes as Nox disappeared in a flash, feeling a grasp on the back of her head, before her head was reintroduced to the floor, blood spraying from her nose as it shattered. It hurts, Valen thought as Nox dragged her back up from the ground, still grasping her head as he brought her head up before slamming her head into the ground once more, blood spurting further down her face, and across the floor. Valen breathed heavily as Nox's hand full of brown hair, as he brought their faces level to each other. The backs of her hands slung across the ground, simply unable to move as white noise rung in her ears. Nox himself knelt down next to her, slowly bringing her eyes to look at him. The breathing of his mask audible in her ears as air vented out, the black lens reflecting her own eyes back at her. You're the only one for me, the only one worthy, Valen thought as she tried to reach out for his helmet, black swimming on the border of her vision as she quickly began to lose consciousness, her arms falling back to her side as she went limp. Tatooine. Unfortunately, we were unable to repair the hyperdrive. We don't have what we need to fix it, Klieg stated as they once more came together, this time for lunch. Padme slumped slightly, closing her eyes as she took a deep breath. I and the Queen appreciate all your help, Padme mumbled as she played with her food. Would it be possible to acquire a ship? Qui-Gon asked as Shmi shook her head. Not from the locals, they're either sabotaged or tracked around here. Nobody is going to sell you a ship without ulterior motive, Klieg responded as Padme proceeded to zone out of the conversation, her previous conversation with Kanye weighing in on her thoughts. Just because we don't have the parts needed to repair your hyperdrive, doesn't mean we can't buy them. Watto has a few of the required tools, and others outside of the settlements should have the rest, Owen mused as he rubbed his chin, Padme sitting up slightly, as Kanye withheld a scoff. Pretentious prick, if it wasn't for mother, you and your pathetic father would be sitting in a sand hut performing a circle jerk, Kanye raged internally as she scowled. Qui-Gon eyed her carefully, as she frustratingly cut at her steak, nearly carving the plate in two. I really need to talk to the handmaiden, Qui-Gon thought as he watched the obvious Force-sensitive border closer and closer to the dark side, as her musings got the better of her. I'll go and get them as soon as we're finished here, Anakin stated as his hideous bowl cut of blonde hair bobbed in the air. I'm coming with you, Lord knows how cooed up I get, Kanye stated as she glared at her now empty plate. Perhaps you could pick my Padawan up from our ship on your way. He needs the experience to stand on his own 2 feet, Qui-Gon stated, not missing the immediate drop in temperature of the room coming from the Okay, I didn't get to talk to him at the ship. Is he nice? Anakin asked as he turned to the aging Jedi. He's strong-willed, but a kind boy. You'll get along great, Qui-Gon stated as Anakin slowly smiled. It's settled then, Shmi announced as she wiped her mouth. I've made my decision, Shmi asked as they walked through the curtains and onto the balcony. What is your verdict? Qui-Gon asked. A great deal of nervousness swept through his being as he waited for her answer, watching the speeder car disappear into the distant sand dunes, the miasma of Force energy from the two on the speeder visible to Qui-Gon as he concentrated. You may take Anakin with you, I hate to admit it, but he hates it here. This isn't the life that he wants to be something more, and I'd hate myself if I was the reason to stop him. Shmi relented as she sighed and looked towards the Master. I'll make you this promise, Shmi. He'll be safe. I'll give my life if I must. I'll train him myself if I must. He'll become a great Jedi, I'm sure of it, Qui-Gon stated as the woman's eyes turned to glaciers. If anything happens to our little Ani, Master Jedi Kanye would be the least of your worries, Shmi warned as the Jedi nodded slowly. You speak of their father, Qui-Gon remarked as Shmi nodded. That is for me to know, and you to worry about. Shmi climbed up as she quickly left the Jedi Master and turned to Klieg. Anakin, I need to talk to you, Kanye stated as her ebony hair blew in the air, a neutral expression coming over her face. What is it, sis? Anakin asked as they flew over the dunes. You need to be careful in what you say about father, she stated as she looked to the boy, his expression one of confusion. What do you mean by that? Anakin asked as the terrain turned to rock occasionally. Father is different from what a lot of people are used to, Ani. People don't like things they don't understand. They'll hurt him. Do you want the Kanye hated manipulating the boy, but it had to be done, for her family. Of course not, he's our dad, he protects us just like we protect him, Anakin retorted as his visage grew resolute. Then you already know what to do. And if you're unsure, look to HK or me, and we'll give you something subtle to go off, Kanye stated as a silver glint appeared in the distance. Can I ask you some questions? Pad nearly jumped off the comfortable bed she lay on as she turned towards the Jedi. Of course, please have a seat, she responded as Qui-Gon sat slowly onto the edge of the bed. You, Kanye and the Queen have known each other for a long time. Now I've noticed, but the guards and even the furniture are foreign to this place. Do you know where the Skywalkers come from? Qui-Gon asked as he studied the 14-year-old, whom promptly hid her true emotions like an expert manipulator. Her Majesty and Kanye met in the Royal Academy. It was surprising, but I heard she had bought her way in, false of course, but I'm unaware of the truth. Until recently the Queen and I didn't know she even had a family apart from her father, whom sent her to Naboo. Padme relented honestly, as she thought of one of her most trusted advisors. Is the Queen aware of her unique attributes? Qui-Gon asked as Padme nodded slowly. She's aware, yes. Kanye has always been able to just do things that others simply couldn't. And we all trust her judgment, Padme stated matter-of-factly. That's what I'm afraid of, Qui-Gon mused before ending the conversation and leaving the rather impressive guest bedroom. Of course, Master, they're here now. I'll relay what I'll learn, Obi-Wan stated as he turned off his communicator, the speeder slowing to a stop in front of the Nubian starship. Lady Kanye boy, I wasn't expecting you, Panaka stated as he walked up to the two whom jumped out of the speeder. We're here to pick up the Padawan before going to collect the tools needed to repair the hyperdrive, Kanye stated, as Panaka nearly failed to hide his joy at hearing the Padawan would be going with them. The Padawan in question walked toward them, keeping his calm as his brown cloak and tan robes flowed in the scorching winds. We better get going if we want to get this done. The holier than thou to be, GD stated, as he jumped in the back of the speeder, Kanye, resisting the urge to run her blade through the teen's chest. Panaka looked at her worryingly as her eyebrow twitched before she let out a cool breath. Panaka eyes on the dunes at all times. We're alone out here, haven't been for a long time. They believe the Queen is still here with you. Keep it that way, Kanye stated lowly so only the captain would hear, his eyes narrowing as he nodded slowly, his eyes scanning the horizon with a scowl as he turned and swiftly left. What was that about? Obi-Wan asked with a raised eyebrow as Kanye hopped into her spot. Nothing, Anakin, get going, Kanye ordered as Anakin forced the speeder forward towards Mos Espa. But they're really related. They look similar in a few aspects, but there are a lot of differences, Obi-Wan thought as he looked at the black-haired girl, her gaze kept forward before her eyes slowly turned to him. Something I can help you with? Kanye asked with a raised eyebrow, crossing her arms under her considerable bust. Curious, that's all. Master Qui-Gon told me you're force sensitive, and Anakin here too, but your mother isn't, Obi-Wan stated and left the question in the air. Then it's rather obvious where we inherited it from, isn't it? Kanye stated before turning back to the rolling dunes, the tiny speck of Mos Espa on the horizon. You don't like me, do you? Obi-Wan stated as Anakin snorted. Don't take offense to it, Kanye doesn't like anyone outside of our immediate family, other than Padme at least, I think, Anakin mused as he slowly cut himself off as he noticed his sister's sour expression. I have my reasons, Anakin, Kanye stated as Obi-Wan grew admittedly curious. As far as he knew, the girl was borderline hostile with pretty much anyone she didn't trust, and from what he had seen, she didn't trust anyone. Is there a specific reason you don't like me? Obi-Wan asked as the black-haired girl observed him for a few moments. First of all, your attitude stinks. You think you're better than everyone around you without considering anything about the other, and you always think you're right as a result. It makes me want to beat your pretty little face, and Kanye started as Obi-Wan looked scandalous. Anakin, if you ever turn out like that, I'll beat it out of you as well. Got it? Anakin gulped as he nodded, Kanye huffing, while Obi-Wan sat back into his seat in silence, Mos Espa now clearly ahead of them as they approached. Qui-Gon meditated, muffled voices running through his head as he sought answers through the Force. His vision remained blurry as he heard the clashing of lightsabers, a low growl and a young man's scream of anguish. His eyes widened at Obi-Wan's voice, the young man's face peering at him with a horrified gaze. A red barrier separating them, on the side of the vision, showed a hazy figure of black robes and yellow eyes. Nothing is ever set in stone, an unknown voice sounded in his ears as his brow furrowed. What was that? Qui-Gon thought, only to receive no response, sweat running down his face before wiping it and standing. You look satisfied, Scorpio stated as she looked at the Emperor, his back turned to her as fighters flew in front of the window. I was just telling someone something, Nox stated as his black eyes turned towards the womanist droid next to his throne. Prepare my ship, Scorpio, the pieces are falling into place, Nox ordered as the droid did his bidding. That Tadarian was in, but Obi-Wan grunted as they hefted several objects into the back of the speeder. He's in, but he has his uses, Kanye rebuked as Anakin sat comfortably. And he wasn't helpful until you came in, Obi-Wan thought. It's like he was scared. Now to the Jawas, Anakin announced as they all hopped in. The what? Obi-Wan raised an eyebrow. Inhabitants of the planet from long ago. Long story short, they've adapted into junk dealers. They'll have the rest of what we need, Kanye announced as they departed. That's her, isn't it? A red-skinned alien asked his comrades. It is. Alert his lordship. Mission is a go, his bandaged comrade stated as the first nodded and quickly left the scene. Obi-Wan observed the siblings as they haggled with the small brown creatures. A giant brown machine with 4 treads was behind them, the obvious owners brining around several objects, trying to convince the siblings in the trade. We'll take the coaxium, the capacitors and cooling agent, the cell injectors, as well as the previously mentioned tools, Kanye stated as the Jawa they conversed with motion to get what was requested. Kanye reached into her outfit and pulled out a very expensive looking object. I assume you know what this is. It didn't take a genius to figure out that the Jawa wanted what she had in her hand. Take it, my family owns tons of these ingots. You know who to trade these to, every month we'll meet and trade. Got it, Kanye stated as the Jawa held up its hands, and she placed a single ingot upon it. The trade complete as the Jawas placed the parts into the back of the speeder car. That's a mighty rare piece of metal you got there. Our boss would like to know about it when we bring you to him, a red-skinned horned man stated as several thugs appeared on their speeders. I assume Jabba is attempting to change the deal, Kanye stated as the man chuckled and motioned at the thugs. Anakin, start up the speeder, get the rifle under the seat ready, and you little guys, business is done, better pack up and go. The Jawas fled at her advice as Jabba's men reached for their weapons. Kanye looked at Obi-Wan with a side glance, his eyes widening as the air grew heavy around them, the woman curling her fingers and arms inwards before flinging her arms forwards. Obi-Wan was left speechless as the ground exploded in front of him. Thugs hurled into the air, and speeders tossed across the sand. A trench carved into the sand over 100 meters in length. They wouldn't stay down for long. Let's get out of here. Kanye hastily made her way to the hopper as Obi-Wan slowly followed, weariness visible in his eyes. You can use the Force. You've been trained, Obi-Wan accused as he held his lightsaber held. I discovered this ability by accident as a child. It didn't take very much to figure out how to do again, and practice. I haven't been trained. I learned it myself. Kanye stated at least it wasn't all a lie. After all, she did do it by accident during her early life in her village. Obi-Wan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. I'm sorry for jumping to conclusions. I was just surprised, Obi-Wan stated as he let his lightsaber go and hang from his belt. Kanye herself relaxed, having barely been restraining herself from her own lightsaber hidden within the folds of her outfit. Kanye quickly picked up the disruptor rifle and took aim behind them, several speeders quickly approaching. Firing a shot from the rifle, Kanye watched satisfied as one of the 10 goons exploded. Their smiles soon left as several plasma bolts shot towards them. Jedi, make yourself useful, would you, while a deal with them? Anakin, go faster, Kanye ordered as Obi-Wan slowly pulled out his lightsaber before activating it. Care to tell me why these guys are after us? Obi-Wan asked as he deflected a green bolt back towards its shooter. They work for the crime lord Jabba the Hutt. Our father made a deal with Jabba, and apparently he wants to change the conditions. I think they plan to kidnap us and use us as blackmail, Kanye stated as she fired another beam, connecting to the front of one of the 5 speeders, which promptly erupted in flames. And what would happen to me? Obi-Wan asked as his blue blade intercepted another bolt. Probably executed. You aren't needed, Kanye stated nonchalantly as Obi-Wan grew bitter. How powerful could you make that push if it came down to it? Obi-Wan asked. If it comes down to it, she may be our best bet out of here. If I could guarantee Anakin's safety with it, from my practice and estimates, a full power push would likely require them to change the map for this location afterwards, Kanye admitted, while Obi-Wan nodded slowly with a gulp. I'll keep that in mind for if we have no other options, Obi-Wan stated. Makes sense for such a midichlorian count that high. Raising the rifle once more, Kanye let loose another beam, separating the engine from the speeder before it dove nose first into the ground, hurling the goons into the air. Obi-Wan himself decided to concentrate as the goons kept firing, down to just 2 speeders, as Obi-Wan directed a bolt into the hands of one for the drivers, whom promptly lost control. The final was lost via some expert control done by Anakin, passing a narrow crevasse with the opposing speeder colliding with a stone pillar. Father isn't going to be happy, is he? Anakin asked Kanye, who nodded and placed the disruptor rifle on the floor. No, he isn't, Kanye responded as Obi-Wan raised an eyebrow at their cryptic conversation. So it's fixed, Shmi asked as Kanye nodded, Obi-Wan and Anakin walking in behind her. Obi-Wan made eye contact with Qui-Gon, and they exchanged a quick nod. Mom, you should have seen it. Jabba's men came. I saw Obi-Wan's lightsaber, and Kanye went all whoosh and threw them into the sky. Anakin ranted happily as Shmi's mouth opened a bit. Oh dear, Padme stated as Qui-Gon raised an eyebrow at the throwing into the sky comment. I think you may have underestimated how powerful an untrained Force sensitive can be, Master Obi-Wan stated telekinetically as Qui-Gon grunted and nodded. Tell me everything, Qui-Gon asked as Kanye subtly looked at them with a side glance. She knows the Force push ability, learned it herself, and from what I've seen and what she says, could most likely level a very large portion of the temple with adequate time, Obi-Wan mentally responded as Kanye laughed to herself. Untrained, Qui-Gon had to ask. I believe her claims that she is untrained, Obi-Wan stated. Anakin, how would you like to go with Master Qui-Gon and learn to be a Jedi? Shmi asked as Anakin's face lit up. Really? Anakin asked with pure happiness as he vibrated in place. Really, Shmi stated as she knelt down. I put a lot of thought on it. You're meant for something great, we both know that and have for a very long time. I've been afraid of letting you go. But your place is to change the galaxy. All I ask is that you never forget me, never forget your family. Anakin stopped with his happy musings as his face slowly went neutral. You're not coming? Anakin asked in desperation and moved closer to his mother. I'm not brave enough, my little angel. I'm happy here. Your father has provided all I'd ever need, but your place is not here. However, if you don't want to be a Jedi, then my arms will always welcome you home, Shmi stated as Anakin held her, tears leaving both their eyes as Kanye silently raged, barely containing her hatred at the Jedi for tearing them apart. Mom, I'm gonna make you proud. I'll come back to you when I'm powerful and respected as my own person, and then we can see the stars together, all of us as a family, Anakin stated as Shmi nodded. I look forward to that day, my little angel. Go now, pack your things. I have some things to discuss with the Jedi, Shmi stated as she let go of the somber boy. Go to his room to get his things. Obi-Wan couldn't keep the foul taste out of his mouth. We came in and tore their family apart, Obi-Wan thought. He was a Jedi, attachments were forbidden, but he couldn't help but feel for those that still had them. What made matters worse was the black-haired beauty glaring up a storm at the Jedi Master. She's still glaring at me, isn't she? Qui-Gon asked mentally as sweat ran down the older man's neck. Religiously so, Obi-Wan responded with a small smile, the petite girl quickly turning her ire to Obi-Wan, whom turned away as quickly as his neck would allow. Walking towards the ship in a slow pace, having been dropped off by Shmi and Clegg, the teary-eyed ordeal had left Anakin clutching his sister. The handmaiden Padme was keeping to herself, very well aware of her friend's anger and believing it to be justified. We'll be having words, Kanye stated out of the blue, her voice low as Obi-Wan couldn't withhold his audible gulp. Now being a few hundred meters from the Nubian spacecraft, Qui-Gon was not looking forward to the intimidating young woman's words. If a woman is angry, not and agree or flee, Qui-Gon thought to himself as Panaka stood at the ramp of the ship. Kanye herself stopped in her tracks, eyes narrowed as she started looking around. Anakin, take Padme, run, Kanye ordered as the sound of an approaching speeder was heard. Pushing both Anakin and Padme, the young boy grabbing the handmaiden's hand and running in the direction of the ship. I take it by your reaction you don't believe this to be a friendly. Let's go, Qui-Gon asked as he pulled out his lightsaber, easily able to feel the dark side approaching. Something's wrong, prep the ship for immediate takeoff, Panaka ordered as he watched Padme and Anakin sprint in their direction, the boy's bag jiggling on his back as the three more capable stayed jogging behind slightly, hoping to give the two the most time. Kanye pulled out her disruptor rifle and took aim at a far-off sand dune, before letting loose a shot, the silver speeder that leapt over the crest, narrowly avoiding the shot as the black-clad figure quickly approached. Obi-Wan, Kanye, I'll distract him, Qui-Gon stated as he ignited his lightsaber. Only if he can catch us, Kanye stated as she released a force push, the black-clad figure deciding to abandon the vehicle just in time to avoid the attack, leaping through the air and landing in a crouch. The figure soon began a dead sprint for them, Kanye and Obi-Wan fleeing at Qui-Gon's orders, whom stood his ground. It took 20 seconds for the figure to reach Qui-Gon, lighting a single red blade as he leapt through the air at the aged Jedi. Lightsabers collided in a brilliant display of light as they exchanged blows. The assailant leaping from left to right as his lightsaber sailed through the air, probing and searching for holes in the human's defenses. Are we clear to depart? Kanye asked as she made it to the ship's ramp, Panaka nodding from atop the ramp as he held a blaster. Keep low and bring the ship round. We're picking up our resident Jedi Master, Kanye ordered as the ship churned up the sand below before leaving the ground, giving close to the ground as they neared the fight. Qui-Gon was distracted, easily recognizing the robe of the figure from his visions. So this is the one, Qui-Gon mused as he kept fighting, hearing the ship nearby as he took his chance, punching his opponent in the jaw hard enough to stun the man before leaping into the air, landing on the ramp of the ship. It wasn't enough, however, as his opponent leapt at the ship as well. Qui-Gon felt a small hand on his shoulder as he was pulled up the ramp, the black-haired girl's face holding a furious gaze as she stepped forward, energy rippling through her as she pulled her arms towards her chest. I don't think so, Kanye mumbled out loud before printing an exertion. The assailant himself sensing the danger as he held his arms in front of him, and made to defend himself with the force. What happened next amazed and bothered Qui-Gon as the girl let the attack loose, the air distorting around her hands as the robed assassin was propelled far away by the push, the scope of the attack, parting the sands in waves before hitting the ground, leaving dust larger than the ship to which they stood on. A massive fissure remained as Kanye lowered her arms. Let's go inside, Qui-Gon nodded as the ramp closed behind them, the ship soon hurtling through the atmosphere and leaving the system, never noticing themselves soon followed by three large warships tasked with protecting them, nor the cloaked personal ship of one of the most dangerous entities in the galaxy, dropping out of hyperspace and heading for Mos Eisley. Maul slowly rose from the ground, the force healing his wounds, his tattered robes falling around him. Yellow eyes boiling in rage at the unknown that had stopped him. Such power, she wasn't mentioned. I must know more, Maul mused as he slowly rose to his feet, the now bare stone around him uplifted by the attack meant to kill him. Maul began his walk to his speeder, several questions running through his mind as his anger grew at the unknown. Jabba's palace. Screams, the screams of the guilty, the innocent. Screams sang through the palace as their terror was announced to all. The dark had descended to Tatooine, retribution at hand as it assaulted them. Room after room of goons, bounty hunters and guards fell to a black blade with a purple outline, the lights of the palace unresponsive and unresponsive, as the blade itself screamed as if in pain. Jabba sat, his spouse holding him as she quivered, his own eyes peering within the dark room towards the entrance he knew would be used, his most loyal brandishing their weapons as footsteps announced the man's arrival on the other side of a durasteel door. Jabba watched as the door simply flew of its hinges and bisected several hunters. The figure wore his Sith cultist armor, his screaming purple blade held in his left hand. The room was bathed in a purple light that came from the blade, before that same light disappeared as he switched the blade off and clapped it to his belt, delving the room into pitch blade dot. 12 of you, your entire armada of men couldn't stop me from my walk from Mos Eisley to here. What do you think you're going to do? The terrifying modulated voice of the man asked as the men simply opened fire, lighting up the room as streams of light, revealing the man to have simply stood still with his arms behind his back dot. Jabba watched in silent terror as the plasma bolts stopped halfway to the man before reversing their courses, instantly killing everyone who had opened fire, only 3 remaining as they lowered their weapons and fled through another door, having a vague idea of the layout as they took to navigating in the dark dot. I agree wholeheartedly with your thinking. I too was thinking it's time to renegotiate our contract, Nox stated, blood-colored lightning sparked in his hands, the room taking on an ominous red lighting, before he took a single step towards the happy hot couple dot. Roman caused the dark temple. Nox looked up at the hulking temple with squinted black eyes, rain from the planet-wide, never-ending storm pelting his drenched face, the branding on his face which he had long since healed through the Force dot, looking no older than when he had reawoken in this year. The X-70B Phantom was landed below the steps on the temple atop an excavated plateau of sand in front of the temple entrance, surrounded by several collapsed and crumbling statues. He wore his cultist armor under a thick black cloak with his helmet in pieces, and ready to construct itself when needed. Hail and beware, this temple is full of dark and ancient secrets. It is currently ruled by one of my long-dead ancestors. He is the nightmare of this world. Beware of him, Nox instructed, as they started making their way up the steps of the temple, and towards the opening dot. The overgrown vines covering the entrance being torn out of the ground and tossed away to clear a path for the 2 individuals. It's whispering to me, Valen mused as she listened closer. The damp brown hair clinging to her face, as her sickly yellow eyes looked towards the shadows who moved on their own. That would be him. I can feel him. Come, Nox ordered as they walked through the entrance, taking one of the 2 passageways towards the central chamber. Pillars holding up the second floor of the temple connected to buttresses, while 12 crystals lit the temple as they hung from the roof. At the end of the humongous room was a single horrid statue, arms held to his side in a silent scream as green esoteric energy bled from the stone. Flesh of my flesh, the temple whispered as Valen followed behind Nox up towards the second level of the central chamber, via a staircase behind the giant statue of a Sith pureblood. After walking through a few cobweb-filled passages, they exited a final passage which opened up into a large crypt with a single coffin at the top of a small flight of stairs. Right ritual stones stood in front of the coffin, whilst 12 statues lined the sides of the room. You live. I wondered how I had not faded, and here stands the reason, my area blue apparition announced as it walked out of the coffin, Aloysius Calig in all his glory, walking towards his only living relative. It's been a long time, Calig, Nox stated as they came to stand a few feet from each other. I take it you won, Calig inquired as Nox nodded slowly. I have brought glory to the Calig family, as the Emperor of the Eternal Empire, Dark Lord of the Sith, and chosen of the Force, Nox stated as Calig and Nox bowed to each other in mutual respect. You have done well, my child. You have done greater than even I for our bloodline. I rest easy, knowing that our goals have come to fruition. Well, if I could pass, Aloysius stated as the apparition openly mused. I have come to you with a proposition, Nox stated as Aloysius looked at him in curiosity and motioned for the man to continue. I am out of my time, bent to the whims of the Force against my will. The Sith are but extinct. You once drew power from me to reawaken. I want to take that further. By binding us together, you would escape this rundown, forgotten temple and have the possibility to truly experience what the galaxy has to offer outside of these walls, Nox explained as Aloysius crossed his arms behind his back, head down in deep thought. You say you're out of your time, the Sith extinct and a chosen, flesh of my flesh. Explain your words, the Sith apparition demanded as Valen shifted impatiently. The Force gifted me true immortality as my power grew exponentially. And for that it placed a task upon me to guide the galaxy as I see fit. It changed me. I was an unwilling. I had a wife and an heir taken from me the same day I was changed. I will have them back. I will have my vengeance. Not even time will keep me from them, Nox explained as Aloysius paced back and forth. A truly terrible task thrust upon you. If I had seen my wife killed before my eyes, I would wish vengeance upon my enemies too. Let it be known those of the Calig line are honorable, powerful and protect their own. I will join you, Calig stated as Nox nodded slowly, both Sith figures becoming enveloped in a purple haze of energy, as Nox held his hands up towards his ancestor, the energies merging into one. Yes, Aloysius mused as he felt the bond between himself and Nox growing exponentially, temple shaking around them with Aloysius drawing in his residual energies from the area, passing from him towards Nox himself. Both Nox and Aloysius' eyes took on a purple glow, as the ritual was completed in an explosion of the Force. Aloysius lowered to the ground, and the two bowed to each other once more. The residents dead or alive and the temple answers to their lore, Aloysius stated as he stood once more, Nox nodding before looking towards the entryway to the room. As it should be, the Calig family is one member closer to its completion. Come, there are still some things in this temple that I still wish to have Nox order. As he began to walk to the other hidden rooms of the temple. Gather the others, they'll be coming with us. Nox ordered as Aloysius went forward throughout temple to gather the dead. I can feel the old taint of father here, Valen half-asked and implied as she looked at her lord with adoration in her gaze. He used this temple after finding it as a sort of throne as his seat of power when he masqueraded as Vitiate. You commit many experiments here. I have come for them and others, Nox stated as Valen nodded, rubbing her smooth chin slowly, as she analyzed the murals of the temple. There are some passageways which are destroyed. Vitiate destroyed them in a bit of petty rage. However, that does not hinder my plans, Nox stated as they came to stand on the second floor of the central chamber once more. Tumbling through hyperspace, Anakin shuddered slightly as he leant over a small silver table. The occult Anakin stated as she brought in a soft blanket and placed it on the young man's shoulders. Now then, I can feel you're apprehensive. What's getting to you? Kanye asked as she hugged Anakin, the blonde nodding as he leant into her. I'm going to be alone in a temple, with people I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be like, what they're like or what to do, Anakin stated as he looked towards his older sister for help. You won't be alone, Nani. I'm not as strong as father, but I will always heed your call. And father will always be there for us. Remember the saying, Ani. Father knows, she stated as she tucked her face just under her eye, as the little boy chuckled lightly. A knock on the door interrupted their small banter as Padme made herself known, dressed as a handmaiden, while her young features looked over both siblings, determination filling her eyes. Mind if I intrude? Padme asked as Kanye motioned for her to join them, to which she happily obliged. I will not serve, some upstart, a disembodied human Sith hybrid spirit screamed as his following joined him in retaliation. Valen fumbled with her lightsaber as the portion of Sith spirits drew together, whilst many were unsure as their shadows shifted. Aloysius stood beside Nox himself, lowering his head as the Sith spirit took a step forward. I don't think you understand. You seem to think you have a choice, that you can say no. I believe we must erase those delusions. Aloysius's presence in the Force exploded. The rival of Tulak Horde himself shook the temple in his rage, the pride of his heir bolstering his power, raising his arms as the resisting spears rose from the ground. The Sith Lord Farshal, his apprentice Enier, along with his rival Vacuous and their cohorts, floated restrained in the Force, as they struggled to escape the dead Dark Lord's grasp. Let us begin, Nox stated as he pulled his hood down, black eyes glowing with purple iris. You will all serve, Nox shouted as he thrust his arms forward, black and purple clouds of energy obscuring his hands, as several of the hovering spirits exploded into energy, before their essences were absorbed and bound by Nox himself. Farshal, in a state of terror, released a force push at Aloysius, momentarily distracting the obscenely strong side spirit, but not doing anything significant. Farshal pulled the Sith ceremonial execution blade from Valen's grasp, the weapon stopping halfway towards him before it redirected towards Nox, the handle lightly landing in the Sith Emperor's hand. The apathetic Nox growled as Farshal shot forward, dragged towards Nox against his will, exploding into wisps which were in turn absorbed by Nox once again. I implore you all to resist. An unwilling spirit provides more power. One by one I will get all of you either way, Nox stated as pandemonium erupted amongst the spirits. Let the cleansing and consumption begin, Nox uttered as he leapt into Hefray Force energy resulting around him as the storms around the planet intensified, spirits fleeing and hiding, others attempting to battle as Aloysius joined his heir, both reveling in the battle. Padme sighed, having just viewed the holo vid from the governor, her orange outfit snug on her as she contemplated. I take that recording with a grain of salt until we can confirm what is actually happening through more sources. But apart from that, what is it you wanted to talk about? Kanya asked as she ran her fingers through the sleeping Anakin's soft hair. I came to realize recently that I never knew too much about you or your childhood or family. I want to rectify that, Padme stated as she clasped a glass of brown-colored liquid, appreciating the distraction from the video provided by Kanye. Ask away, Kanye simply stated as Pad nodded, slowly drinking from her cup. What is your home like? Please describe it for me, Padme asked as Kanye rubbed her chin slightly as she chose her words carefully. My homeworld is ruled solely by my father, as well as the other worlds our people reside upon. He is the sole monarch of our empire. Our homeworld is called Sakuel. Its cities tower into the skies and past the atmosphere. Instead of expanding entirely over the surface of our home, we build up. The highest of these towers is Father's throne, where he controls everything. Kanye began as she remembered something before pulling out a holodisc, soon followed by a hologram of Sakuel. Outside of the boundaries of the city are large swamps and forests, untouched by our people for millennia, as we let it flourish. Our people are happy under the leadership of Father. His word is law, and they love him to the point of being fanatics, Kanye continued, as the holodisc showed several groups of citizens. It's beautiful, Padme admitted as she stared intently at the holodisc, admiring the beautiful sight displayed before her as it's safe there, like a policing force. There is the order of the Knights of Zakuul. Imagine GD who can marry, aren't restricted by their views, and are allowed social lives. They are also ruled by the High Justice, who in turn answers to Father, so all answer to him directly. They use the Force to instill justice at the highest order. No matter how small the crime, or who commits it, they will meter out justice. Before Father returned to be Emperor, several politicians had abused their right, trying to seize control of our world, and left the civilians in poverty. Upon my father's return to our home, the Knight brought them before him, and their fates were decided by the populace one by one, Kanye kept explaining, as the Knight of Zakuul appeared in the hollow, their saber staffs and shields held proudly as they represented their empire. Does your home have a military? Padme asked apprehensively, Kanye nodding slowly as the hollow changed and blurred. I trust you, Padme. What you are about to see here, I trust you not to tell anyone, Kanye stated in absolute seriousness. You have my word that no other shall see or hear whatever you tell me, Padme stated in absolute belief of her words, conviction strong. The Emperor controls a fleet of thousands of warships. I personally am not privy to the exact number. Alongside the 100, perhaps even thousands of Knights of Zakuul, is a droid army numbering in the millions, each one capable of flight and tough to pierce. There are other things, but these here make up the majority of our forces, Kanye stated, as Padme's mouth dropped in silent horror. Why would you need that many ships? Why would you make them? Are you planning to conquer the Republic? Padme asked as she shook slightly as she stared at the hollow, showing the formations of the Eternal Fleet. We did not commission these ships. They, along with a few other things we have in our service, are older than even our planet's sentient life. Those that created them crave destruction and war. The absolute order of these creators was the destruction of all organic life, something the fleet will follow, no matter what when not controlled, Kanye stated as Padme paled several shades. What madness, what twisted beings want the destruction of all? How do you even control such horrid ships? Padme stated as she looked at Kanye warily. The Eternal Throne, it erases the subroutines of the original creators, as long as the Emperor controls the throne. Which is also controlled by implants located within his body. Essentially, as long as he lives, the ships will obey, no matter what, Kanye stated as Padme slowly nodded, coming to terms with what was being revealed to her. Now she knows. All she needs is the prodding to seek Father out for help. Is your Emperor, your father, a good person? Padme asked as if unsure. He is kind and caring for those under him, ruthless to those who endanger his people. He protects our home, he protects me and everyone else. He loves and is loved by all. He is beauty in the eyes of his subjects, perfect and an inspiration to the night. The people want to be him and he returns their affections. He's amazing, Kanye stated with adoration heavy in her tone, the love in her gaze stilling Padme to her core. Could such a ruler exist? Not even my own people like me that much, Padme thought as she nodded slowly before rising. Thank you, Kanye, you have given me a lot to think about. I'd like to talk to you more about this later, if that's okay with you, Padme asked, almost desperate in her gaze as Kanye nodded. It's okay, Padme, seek me out whenever you wish, and I'll happily converse with you, Kanye stated as she continued stroking Anakin's scalp. Thank you, Padme stated as the door slid closed behind her as she made her way to her chambers. The dark temple was silent, no whispers, no cackles from deep within the temple or footsteps of unseen entities. Two of the pillars holding up the second floor pulverized to dust, ceiling crystals embedded in the walls with their chains dangling. Passageways collapsed and rubles strewn around as dust occasionally fell from the now unstable ceiling. The central chamber was almost unrecognizable. The main statue had an arm missing, the ground was shattered, with nearly no whole pieces of concrete. Pulverized stones lay in piles of dust, boulders stuck out of the ground, as one of the two entrance ways was simply collapsed. Valen leant against the wall with a sick smile on her face, blood smeared from the sides of her lips while she smiled victoriously. And in the middle of the chamber stood an unscathed Nox, robes pristine as the day it was fashioned. Nox breathed slowly as the force permeated the air surrounding him. The many entities once roaming the now silent halls consumed by Nox willingly or no. A slow, dull and deep screeching sound rung throughout the temple as Nox raised his head. Black star-flecked eyes opened wide while he drew in on himself energy coalescing from the temple, as it too was absorbed by the force wielder. Nox's head shot forward as his back arched and arms clenched at his side. An unholy screech from the force escaping the man's lips, shaking the foundations for the building, as the storm surrounding the planets intensified by a large margin. Every living thing on the planet looked towards the temple in unison, the dark energies forcing many creatures to flee in terror to their homes, whilst the cult of force sensitives were both shocked, terrified and curious, at the unknown event happening across the continent from them. And when the dark side nexus was sucked from the temple in its entirety, Nox lowered his head, veins in his face, pulsing black under his skin for several seconds before returning to their previous color. I am the lord of the temple, its secrets are mine, Nox announced, eyes connecting with Valen's as Aloysius marveled at his air. You are more worthy than I ever thought you would be, flesh of my flesh. I am glad to be your ancestor, Aloysius thought as he stood alongside Nox to observe the damage to the temple. Scorpio, I want everything within this temple en route to Nathema within the hour. Nox relayed through his implants. Of course, my lord. A warship is currently being dispatched to your location with haste. It will arrive momentarily via gate. Orders have been given, and will be overseen by one of my proxies. Scorpio responded as Nox accepted the course of action. Come now, everything will be handled. If it came down to it, I'm sure Scorpio would move the entire temple to Nathema if it was deemed to have anything of value in this stone, Nox ordered as he stepped over the rubble, and towards the only remaining exit. Ceremonial blade clutched in Valen's left hand as she followed behind, while Aloysius disappeared into wisps before being sucked into Nox. Upon entering the courtyard for the temple, the warship deployed was low in the atmosphere, and deploying its units to scour the temple and take everything it held alongside nearby temples. Upon walking up the ramp of the X-70B, Nox took the controls as they lifted from the ground, disengaging the landing gear as Valen stood behind him, chewing her lip as she shifted, the ship raising through the atmosphere before the sky faded to the black of the universe. And where are we going now? Valen asked as Nox input coordinates into the ship's Navi computer. We are having our long-awaited reunion with Corscant, Nox stated as he engaged the hyperdrive, the stars becoming streaks across the viewport. Valen herself looked unsure of what to do as Nox stood from his chair as he removed his cloak and started removing his armor, leaving the flight room, as he made his way to his quarters which held his shower. Do what you wish, it'll be a while before we reach Corscant, Nox stated, now down to a pair of shorts as he turned on the shower, the jets quickly creating steam as he controlled the temperature of the water with the panel. Nox leaned his head against the warm wall of his shower, sighing as the streams of water ran down his athletic muscle body. Nox squared his shoulders and stood tall when he heard the door to his quarters open, turning towards the only other occupant of his ship, as she stared at him with her unflinching yellow-eyed gaze. Removing the jewels from her forehead and placing them on a small white bench, followed by the removal of her cowl and grey cloak. White wrapping were the only things covering her body along with her leggings, as she slowly unwrapped the bandages as she released her breasts into the air. What do you think you're doing? Nox asked as the determined woman removed her boots and leggings, leaving her bare for Nox to see and observe. I've waited, I watched others take the forbidden fruit, take what's mine while I was powerless to stop it. Trapped within your mind as you bet different women who would have used you, had you given them the chance. Your wife allowed you concubines, but she was firm in her position, and would kill any who challenged her. I admire her for that, jealous even. And now it's my turn to take what rightfully belongs to me, Valen reasoned as she stepped towards the shower, grasping the handle as she opened it and stepped in. I've never been with a man, none have been worthy of my attention, until you. You crave power as I did, and you did everything you could to achieve it, until you surpassed, defeated and consumed my tormentor. You've proven yourself to be nigh unstoppable, capable of great feats of destruction and healing. You are an apex predator of the highest order amongst the weak. And as another apex predator, it is you alone who has drawn my attention, my affections and my devotion. I destroy nations, slaughter newborn children and enslave entire species, just to have you look at me. I am yours, Obernic, mind, body and soul. And there is nothing that could possibly change that, for if anything tried, I'd render it into nothingness. Valen purred as she ran her fingers of the pectorals of the man she craved, her digits slowly running down his exposed, chiseled stomach, as she bit her lips. Nox himself stood with a complicated gaze, eyes flashing with several emotions flashed over his face. Feeling the hairs on his neck stand up as she traced over his body. You don't have to say anything, I am aware you don't currently love me, but I know you're attracted to me. And I know in time, you'll come to love me as I do you. I know, because there is no other better for each other than a fellow apex predator, Valen urged as she reached down, her warm breath escaping her in mists as she gripped the thick sex organ of her cherished one, thick enough that she couldn't wrap her hand around the shaft, and had to use both hands to encircle its girth. Slowly she moved her hands back and forward as Nox himself reached forward, straight features as he pulled her against his chest, her breasts firm against him, as her nether regions coated themselves in fluid, as she became more and more turned on. As the length of the organ grew in her hands, bigger than that of her forearm, stroking it as she felt it twitch in her fingers. You're right, I am unsure of what the future holds and hold little trust in some, if any living individual. However, I know of your devotion. Prove yourself to me, your loyalty cannot be in question, your heart must beat for me, and no betraying thought can enter your head. Do that, and I may give you a single chance. Betray me and I will kill you and entrap you in my mind alongside your father, Nox stated as Valen smiled, a true small smile on her face as she leaned up and kissed the man. Take me, Valen urged, watching as Nox slowly lost himself to his pent-up lust, grabbing her by her soft but firm butt, and positioning his member close to her entrance, before slowly lowering her onto it, blood slowly running from her entrance as she lost her virginity. She grit her teeth and took pleasure from the pain, Nox not moving for a few moments before he raised her, and presumed to lower her onto it, as far as it would go into her. Valen's eyes snapped open in painful blissful pleasure, as she felt his member punch the inside of her stomach, bulging against her skin as she wrapped her arms and legs around the man, quivering in pleasure, before he slowly started to increase the intensity at which he rose and lowered her. OHHE's Valen screamed as her fiery eyes glowed in intensity, her fingers digging into the man's shoulders, drawing blood, while the man showed no reaction to the pain, other than several small grunts. Valen felt her vaginal muscles contract as pleasure assaulted her mind, eyes nearly rolling back into her skull as she came, viscous fluid ejecting from her body, and coating Nox, as the man continued to speed up while smashing their pelvic zones together. Nox grabbed Valen by the right leg and rotated her, arms under her legs, her back flush against his stomach as he thrust into her, her arms put to the side as she gripped his hair. I think it's time I broke you, Nox uttered into her ear as he slammed himself fully into her. Several hours later, Valen lay unconscious and unmoving in his bed, her tattooed arms held close to her chest as she spasmed lightly in her unconscious state, residual electricity charges flowing across her skin occasionally. Nox himself sat on his side of his bed, wearing a simple pair of shorts as he dried his hair after another shower. An interesting display. I see our family's sexual prowess still remains strong. The snark from Aloysius, who materialized at the head of the bed, stated, making Nox snort in amusement. Did you mean what you said to her? I did. Whilst I have slept with many individuals, from politicians to civilians. None have been so honest about their intentions, other than my wife Lana. As emperor, I am allowed as many wives and concubines as I see fit. However, it is her actions to decide what she will be. A wife or a simple concubine are dead by my hand. If she ever does become a wife of mine, I will not have them competing. Lana has always had my unrestrained pure love. Valen knows this, and she will try to earn it, and I will allow her the chance, Nox assured as he eyed the blue apparition who nodded to his reasoning. A good idea. Any offspring you produce with this woman, wife or no, will be monsters in their own right. You have done well in ensuring her loyalty, and the continuation of our bloodline if you are to conceive, Aloysius stated his line of thinking as he looked at Valen and Nox. This wife of yours, Lana, I believe you called her. Where is she? Aloysius asked as Nox quickly developed his scowl. Lost for the moment. I keep her comatose in my cortex of memory. I intend to have her back by my side, but I also want the life we produce together to return as well. I must master the technique which I brought Lucille and Valen back with. And I need to ensure their souls are intact. My child's soul was splintered upon Lana's death, and I have been restoring it through the Force. I have done so hours a day for years and still have a long way to go until it is whole again. But I will do it, no matter what I have to do to get them back, Nox told Aloysius, who looked at his heir in sorrow, hating the thought of losing his own children. You will achieve this. Allow me a chance to feel your child's essence, and I will put my efforts into helping you, Aloysius offered as Nox squinted slightly before relenting and drawing Aloysius into his cortex of memory. If anything happens in there, don't expect to return, Nox thought as the spirit of Aloysius ensured no troubles. A powerful presence, not as strong as your own obviously, but strong nonetheless, incomplete as you say, but can be fixed and whole once more. When not out here in the physical realm, I will search the cosmic force for signs or shards. I will either tether to them myself and add them to him or alert you to them. Will this suffice? Aloysius stated as Nox nodded and stood, stretching and popping the muscles in his back. That is acceptable. Say, ever heard of Dedrick? Nox asked as Aloysius' interest rose, soon guided by Nox to a series of couches and tables in the common room. Can we count on the help of your GD? Should we require it? The queen asked. Connie sat by her right side as Tifo stood behind her. I will input the urgency of the situation to the High Council and await their decision. As GD, we are the keepers of the peace, Qui-Gon stated, as he and Obi-Wan stood before the royal party. What he is not saying is that the GD most likely will not decide to aid us if the council decided it's not within their best interests. He mixes his own hopes and aspirations, and is attempting to deliver us false hopes. Hopes we most likely cannot rely upon, Kanye uttered as Obi-Wan quickly came to his master's defense. As Master said, the GD are keepers of the peace. If a world is in danger, then it is our duty to help those in need, as we have done for thousands of years, Obi-Wan argued as Padme silently hid her subtle smile at her friend's jabs. Then prove you're more than a cowardly troop of monks who sit in their towers all day, and do nothing but defer judgment on their own. Kanye prodded as Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan quickly grew flustered, as the woman pushed their buttons with unforeseen talent. The council will help you, I assure you. It is the GD way, Qui-Gon soothed as the queen nodded, allowing the two to leave the room with haste. Didn't have to make fun of them like that, Padme admonished as Kanye chuckled and leaned back into her chair. No, I did not. But it would spur them to prove their words as more than just assurances and take actual measures to help us. Kanye responded as Padme nodded at the young woman's tactics. I admit, you're remarkably cunning when you wish to be. Padme smiled at her longtime friend. You're aware we went to the same academy, aren't you? Doesn't that say a few things about you as well? Kanye retorted as Padme laughed out loud. I suppose it does, Padme admitted before relaxing into her chair. Aloysius' eyebrows twitched, the holographic figures destroying each other on the holo board. They're cheating, somehow, Aloysius stated matter-of-factly as Nox held in a snicker at the entity's bad luck. Maybe not. That is for me to know and you to wonder. That's another win for me. The ebony-haired man chortled before signing and leaning back into the comfy lounge. So you admit to cheating, the ancient Sith accused as he slowly stood from the couch. I admit to nothing, nor would I need to cheat. Nox chuckled as he stood next to the apparition before making his way back to his room, a yawn escaping his lips as he stretched, mind waking me if anything happens. I'll keep an eye out, or until the woman wakes up, and then I can instruct her on what to do, Aloysius stated as Nox got under the covers, the lights of the room dimming as he waved Aloysius off before closing his eyes and resting. This place is as ugly as I thought it would be, Kanye mused as she observed Corscant, feeling it through the Force as she felt the wretched planet for what it was, a hub for disgusting creatures to frolic and freak. That's Corscant, the entire planet is one big city. That's Chancellor Velarum's shuttle, and look over there, Senator Palpatine is waiting for us, the pilot stated to Anakin as they neared the landing platform. Kanye herself cloaking her presence in the dark like never before as she sensed the opposing Sith apprentice. The ship slowly descended into the platform as everyone made to leave the ship as it settled. Black guards surrounding the Queen's double and Padme as they walked forward with Anakin and the Jedi Masters. Tifo and the others stood to the side, while Palpatine waited for them to approach. Kanye herself stood directly behind the Queen to the confusion of some present. It is a great gift to see you alive, Your Majesty, Palpatine soothed as he looked at the Queen. With the communications breakdown, we've been very concerned. I'm interested to hear your report on the situation. May I present, Supreme Chancellor Velarum. Kanye herself gagged behind the Queen so nobody could see, many of the handmaidens hiding their giggles at the woman's dramatic actions, while Padme withheld the twitch of her lips. Welcome, Your Highness. It is an honor to finally meet you in person, the gray-haired man stated as he looked at the black-dressed Queen with professional courtesy. Thank you, Chancellor, the Queen stated as they began to walk with each other, everyone heading towards the speeders at the end of the ramp. I must relay to you how stressed everyone is over the current situation. I've called for a special session of the Senate to what your position, the Chancellor assured as the Queen nodded towards him. I am grateful for concern, Chancellor, the Queen stated before walking along with Palpatine. There's a small problem of procedure, but I am confident we can overcome it, Palpatine mused as they walked along. Qui-Gon himself turned to Velarum, drawing the man's attention. I am afraid I must speak with the Jedi Council immediately. The situation has become much more grave than originally foretold, Qui-Gon stated, as Anakin turned around to see him, a look of confusion on the boy's face before he was called by Kanye to follow her, while Qui-Gon motioned him to follow her. This would be really nice, Misa thinks, Jar Jar stated as Kanye withheld a twitch in her eye. I liked it better as sleep, she mused to herself as they boarded quickly departed. Dropping out of hyperspace, the X-70B maneuvered towards the direction of the Senate and expensive apartment complexes. Hey, go get me a landing pad and accommodation, somewhere comfortable. Nobody is to know, Nox asked as the mutant Sith Lord nodded. Of course, my friend, I was sure you'd come once you found out what was happening. Sheath is currently with the Queen. I'll send you the coordinates for a platform for yourself in a few moments. I'll meet you there myself. We have much to discuss, Hego stated as Nox nodded and let the man do his task, shortly after receiving a set of coordinates and heading towards them. So I can't kill this one. What about the other? Valen asked, once more dressed in her gray and gold ingrained outfit. Perhaps time will tell, Nox assured the woman as they entered the atmosphere of the planet, cloaking themselves within the Force to hide from both religious orders currently on it. Several Eternal Fleets dropped out of hyperspace, each one carrying 12 knights, as they entered Corscant's atmosphere. The pilots avoiding large amounts of traffic, as they covertly made their way to Air Emperor's current lodgings. A very well-off and expensive series of apartments known as the Kaldani Spire's Apartments, a penthouse suite, had been provided for their Emperor, as they moved to protect her Air Lord and High Justice. Landing on the large personal landing platform, the golden armored ingots slept from their ships, and expertly moved to their positions as one by one, the ships dropped off their occupants before once more leaving the planet empty of their cargo. The guard captain Tyrus maintained her professional attitude as she looked over the blueprints for the suite. A long corridor connected to 8 rooms on the first floor, guards situated at every entrance. At the end of the corridor, it took in sharp right, and opened up to 3 more rooms and a staircase at the end, which led to another L-shaped floor above. The second floor had only 4 rooms, only one was the Lord's bedroom, one of the others was the kitchen and eating areas, the third was a hangar which housed their Emperor's X-70B Phantom, and the final was an office for their Lord to conduct business. I want 2 knights guarding every door on the second floor, cameras are to be spliced, and controlled. Skytrooper units will be stored in 2 of the downstairs rooms adjacent to the stairs, ready for immediate deployment. The Emperor's safety is our top concern, Tyrus ordered, as she made her way to the second floor to personally guard their Emperor. Upon entering her lord office, she spotted a Muin whom she recognized when by the name of Hego Demisk, whom happily conversed with her Emperor, both situated on 2 expensive couches as they shared a bottle of wine. Another of the room quickly drew her attention, a female standing a few feet beside her lord. This must be High Justice Valen, I heard, joined our Lord. Tyrus thought, having had no chance to meet the woman due to her duties at the Spire on Zakiel. The woman slowly looked in her direction, Tyrus withholding the shudder that threatened to overwhelm the guard captain under the eyes of the powerful individual. Can't she hear my thoughts? Tyrus thought as the woman squinted before turning her attention to their lord. Tyrus gulping before coming to stand on the opposite side of the room, arms crossed behind her back, prepared to fight in a moment's notice. I admit, the boy is a danger. But he can be guided, he is vulnerable, and I have placed myself as a figure of great importance to him and his mother. He will not be easily dealt with. And we will be prepared for whatever is to come at us, Nox stated as he took a sip and relaxed into his chair, the Mu nodding before doing the same. Sheev doesn't share my worries. He felt the boy and girl in the Force, and wants to convert them to our cause, Hego stated, worried about what his apprentice would attempt. Lord Creath is smart enough to know of his manipulations, and even more not to test my forgiveness. It's her own goals and feelings that would betray her. And Anakin whoever he joins, it matters not, Nox stated as he swirled his glass, eyeing the red liquid, before tipping it back in one gulp. You've trained the girl well, she is powerful, smart and cunning, that much I can sense, but she hides a great deal of it, Hego stated as Nox nodded. It's one of the first things I taught her. Never let anyone know what you're truly capable of. She has taken it to heart, along with the concealment techniques she constantly uses. She is worthy of the title of Lord of the Sith. She isn't the strongest, but will one day become something to be feared, Nox stated as he ran a hand through his hair. Do any of them know of your secret? Hego asked as he eyed the other tenants within the room. For you, Scorpio, the High Justice behind me and the creature of Ladgereth. Not even Lucille or Lord Creath knows my origins, and it will remain that way. My apprentice and anyone else will know only if I deem fit to, Nox reluctantly stated, slowly, as to get the point across. The Mu nodded in agreement. A fitting course of action, fret not, I will take your secret to the grave, Hego promised as Nox nodded in gratitude. Indeed you will, I've had a vision, Hego, Nox admitted as the Mu sat up straight and looked at him with curiosity. I expect you not to trust or intake any wine after this little meeting until our next, especially for any celebrations. Be mindful of betrayal, Nox stated as Hego nodded, looking sad but resolute. Thank you, I appreciate your advice, my friend, and will take it to heart. Now since I am not to have any after this meeting, I plan to have as much as I can. Hego smiled as he kindly asked for another bottle. Qui-Gon sat before Yoda, each sitting in a small dark room with 2 cushions for comforting. I believe it to be a Sith who attacked me, or someone of equal standing in the dark side of the Force, Qui-Gon stated as he looked to the Grandmaster. Believe this you do? Why, Yoda asked as Qui-Gon thought over all the evidence. The individual held a red-colored lightsaber. This isn't exact proof, but yellow eyes of the Sith and the dark presence lead me to this conclusion. I believe it to have been a Sith Lord, Qui-Gon admitted. There wasn't much else to say about the attacker with no definitive proof. Defer to the council, we will, Yoda stated as he waited for Qui-Gon to leave. He may realize whilst leaving more to say. Do you? Upon my travels on Tatooine. I discovered a divergence in the Force, 2 to be exact, Qui-Gon stated as Yoda's ears rose in curiosity. Divergence in the Force, 2, Yoda questioned as Qui-Gon continued. A young boy and a teenage girl. We could so accurately gauge their midichlorian count. They're well over 20,000. I worry for the girl's state in future. Her emotions get the better of her. But her strength in the Force cannot be denied. I know not if her claims of being untrained are true, but nonetheless she holds great potential. The boy on the other hand, he is easier, he is kind, loving and cares for those around him. It is mine and his own wish for him to be trained in the Jedi arts, Qui-Gon finished as Yoda squinted, nodding slightly as he rubbed his ears with his 3-fingered hand. Bring them before us, you will. The council will make a decision, Yoda stated as he slowly rose. I do not know if the girl will come, but I will endeavor to try, Qui-Gon stated. You do not, there is no try, young one, Yoda chuckled as he made his way from the room. Of course, Master Qui-Gon bowed before he moved to fetch Anakin and Kanye. Palpatine's suite. Padme sat on a small couch as Palpatine paced before her. Kanye standing directly behind her, as several maids stood throughout the room. There is no stability, only politics. The Republic is not what it once was. The Senate is full of greasy, squabbling delegates who hold co-interest in the common good, Palpatine announced, as Tifa walked in and stood in the corner of the room. I must be honest, your majesty, there is little chance the Senate will act on the invasion. Chancellor Valerum seems to think there is hope, the young queen stated neutrally. If I may say so, the Chancellor has very little real power. He is swamped by baseless accusations of corruption. The bureaucrats are in charge now, Palpatine informed the young woman who looked unsure. What options do we have? Padme asked as she felt Kanye's hand on her shoulder to soothe her. Our best choice would be to push for the election of a stronger Supreme Chancellor. One who could control the bureaucrats and give us justice. You could call for a vote of no confidence on Chancellor Valerum, Palpatine stated, as he now came to a stop in front of the young lady, who withheld her shock. He's been our strongest supporter, Padme passive-aggressively retorted as Palpatine backed off and continued. Our only other choice would be to submit a plea to the courts, Palpatine relayed. The courts take even longer to decide than the Senate. Our people are dying, Senator. We must do something quickly to remove the Federation, Padme bit, as she looked as if she bit into a lemon. To be realistic, your majesty, I think we're going to have to accept Federation control for the time being, Palpatine stated solemnly. That is something I cannot do. Now if you'll excuse I must prepare for me appeal. Padme dismissed and stood, preparing to leave the room as Anakin and Qui-Gon walked in with another older Jedi master, who wore a kind smile. Your Majesty, I apologize if I am interrupting anything. I have been requested to bring Anakin to the Jedi Council, and would like to ask if Kanye would like to accompany us, Qui-Gon asked, as Count Dooku stood to the side and eyed Kanye warily. My apologies, Master Jedi, I do not wish to join you in the temple. I have important matters to discuss with the Queen, Kanye denied as Qui-Gon nodded and quickly left with Anakin. Padme sat in the Senate building, dressed in expensive and regal clothing, as she reviewed scant slips taken from Naboo. They're taking my people off-world to Cato Nimwaitia, Padme stated as Kanye nodded, sitting next to the girl younger than she. They won't get away with this, Padme, I assure you, that Kanye soothed as Padme held her head in her hands. If the Senate doesn't agree, there is nothing we can do, Padme stated, nearly on the verge of a breakdown as her worry crept on. Padme, I must ask again, do you trust my judgment? Kanye asked as Padme looked at her, unwavering as she nodded. Then, regardless of what happens within the Senate, I will arrange a meeting with someone I trust who should be able to help you, Kanye stated, Padme looking unsure, but nodding nonetheless. As Peter Anakin finished his Mace Windu put down the device and nodded to Master Yoda. The Jedi Masters around the room each astounded by the presence released by the boy. Qui-Gon watched proudly as Obi-Wan stood beside him, both watching the boy in interest. How feel you, Yoda asked as Anakin stood in thought. Cold, sir, Anakin responded confidently, hands held to his sides. Afraid are you, Yoda asked as he leaned forward slightly. No, sir, Anakin once more replied. See through you, we can, Yoda continued as Anakin shook lightly at the admission. Be mindful of your feelings, Mace wisely stated as, not trying to appear mean to the boy. The thoughts dwell on your mother and to your sister Coyote, Mundi stated, his eyes nearly glaring at the small boy. I miss Mum, Kanye is here on Corscant, Anakin admitted as Yoda nodded. Afraid to lose them, I think, Yoda proposed as Anakin slowly became standoffish. What does that got to do with anything, Anakin retorted. Everything. Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. I sense much fear in you, Yoda finished as Mace leant onto his right hand, a thinking pose and glinted eyes. Please, Master Qui-Gon, allow the council to discuss our course of action, Mace stated as the Jedi bowed and led Anakin from the room. Don't worry, Anakin, you will become a Jedi, I promise you that, Qui-Gon promised as Dooku joined up with their little party. It's certainly criffing big enough, Kanye mused internally as she stood in the podium with Padme and Palpatine. The chair recognized the senator from the sovereign system of Naboo, a blue-skinned alien, announced from the center of the large circular room. Hundred of people in their booths, as camera drones flew throughout the room for people outside to watch. Supreme Chancellor, delegates of the Senate, a tragedy has occurred. It started right here with the taxation of trade routes, and has now engulfed our entire planet with the oppression of the Trade Federation. Palpatine began his argument as their booth flew forward. This is outrageous, I object, haughty senator's accusations, Nimwaitia yelled as he and his kind came forward. The chair does not recognize the senator from the Trade Federation at this time, Valorum sternly admonished the alien. To state our allegations, I present Queen Amidala, the elected ruler of the Naboo, who speaks on our behalf. Palpatine introduced as murmurs broke out throughout the room as the Queen came forward. Honorable representatives of the Republic, I come to you under the gravest of circumstances. Naboo's system has been invaded by the droid armies of the trade, Padme began as the Nimwaitian came forward once again. I object, there is no proof, the man confidently announced as Kanye withheld her temptations to leap across the gap between their pods and snap the alien's neck. I recommend a commission be sent to Naboo to discover the truth. The Congress of Mollister concurs with the Honorable Commission from the Trade Federation. A commission must then elect the pot of three-eyed aliens, stated as they came to the defense of the Federation. I could kill all of them, here and now, everyone, and they wouldn't be able to stop me. Kanye raged internally as Palpatine looked at her, easily able to sense her anger. Excuse me, Chancellor, the blue-skinned alien leant into Valorum's ear and began whispering. Enter the bureaucrat. The true rulers of the Republic, and on the payroll of the Federation, I might add. This is where Chancellor Valorum's strength would disappear. Palpatine whispered to the slowly realizing Queen, realizing the Republic would not rule in her favor as her people suffered. Slowly the Queen tilted her head as her eyes connected with her friend. I will arrange a meeting with someone I trust that I know will help. Whispers played within Padme's ears as she became resolute in her choice. I hope you're right, Kanye, Padme thought, but I must see this through first. The point and conceded. Will you defer your motion to allow the commission to explore the validity of your accusations? The alien announced as he looked one on the Queen with hard eyes. I will not defer. I have come before you to resolve this attack on our sovereignty now, Padme announced heatedly as her regal voice rung throughout the room, more murmurs breaking out. I was not elected to watch my people suffer, and as while you discuss this invasion in a committee, if this body is not capable of action, I suggest new leadership is needed. I move for a vote of no confidence in Chancellor Valorum's leadership. The murmurs throughout the room devolved into near shouting as Valorum slowly sat into his chair, shock evident on his face as he slowly looked at the scheming Palpatine. So this is your play, Valerum thought as he resigned himself to what came next. Order, the bureaucrat yelled out as Palpatine leant into the Queen's ear. Now they will elect a new chancellor, a stronger chancellor, one that will not allow tragedy to continue, Palpatine pointed out as the Queen nodded slightly to his words. Vote now, vote now, vote now. Kanye looked around the room, a sinister smile upon her face missed by all as everything played into her lord's hands. Night descended over Corscant, and at the Jedi Temple, the Masters and Anakin stood with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon to decide Anakin's fate. The Force is strong with him, Qui-Gon stated as Qui-Gon nodded. He is to be trained, then Qui-Gon inquired as Yoda closed his eyes. No, he will not be trained, Mace said firmly, casually resting on his chair as Anakin looked at his with a piercing glare. No, Qui-Gon asked, shocked as he placed his hands on his hips. He's too old, Mace continued as Anakin's emotions slowly started to bubble. He is the chosen one, you must see it, Qui-Gon argued as he stepped closer to Anakin. A Chen clouded this boy's future as Yoda soothed as he closes his eyes and sensed the boy through the Force. Qui-Gon puckered his lips as he stepped forward. I'll train him, then I take Anakin as my Padawan learner, Qui-Gon announced, silently trying to ignore the betrayed look his own Padawan sent his way as he tested his hands on Anakin's shoulders. An apprentice you have, Qui-Gon. Impossible to take on a second, Yoda argued as Mace sat forward. The code forbids it, Mace backed up his old master. Obi-Wan is ready, Qui-Gon announced as Obi-Wan reluctantly stepped forward to defend his master's decision. I am ready to face the trials, Masters, Obi-Wan put forward his judgment. Our own counsel we will keep on, who is ready, Yoda retorted. He's headstrong and has much to learn of the living Force, but he is capable, there is little more he can learn from me, Qui-Gon kept arguing as Obi-Wan looked apprehensively at his master. Young Skywalker's fate will be decided later, Yoda finished as Mace leaned forward. Now is not the time for this. The Senate is voting for a new Supreme Chancellor and Queen Amidala is returning home, which will put pressure on the Federation and could widen the confrontation, Mace announced, as the three standing in the middle of the room nodded along. And draw out the Queen's attacker, Qui-Gon stated as Qui-Gon nodded at their thinking. You will go with the Queen to Naboo and discover the identity of this dark warrior you told Master Yoda about. This is the clue we need to unravel the mystery of the Sith, Mace finished as he leaned back into his chair. May the Force be with you, Yoda concluded as the three in the center bowed before making their leave. We must go alone. They're secretive about who they meet and only permitted the two of us, Kanye stated as Pat looked unsure. I'll leave Sabe to be my double, Padme announced as Sabe bowed and went to change. I don't agree with this course of action, Your Majesty, Tifos stated his disagreement as he came forward. It could be a trap. I trust Kanye, and if she trusts whoever we are meeting, then I have my faith in her. Now we don't have much time, we must depart at once, the young queen stated as she dressed herself into less regal clothing to play off as not being the queen. Very well, let us depart, Kanye announced as she got into the speeder taxi, followed closely behind by Padme who hopped in beside her, the speeder soon flying through the Corscant skies. She's excited, Padme thought as she looked at Kanye, the woman looking forward with a smile, obviously happy. Throughout the trip the two sat in silence as they took in the nightlife while Kanye guided them. We're nearly there, are you ready, Kanye asked as they quickly approached what appeared to be an apartment complex. I appreciate all you've done for me, I won't soon forget it, Padme stated as they approached the landing platform at what appeared to be a penthouse. As they landed on the platform, Padme took notice of golden armored minutes, marching towards them in a line of two, surrounding a dark grey outfitted woman with glowing yellow eyes. Greetings, it is a pleasure to meet you both, Lady Kanye, Your Majesty, come along with me, Valen urged as the two hopped out of the taxi to be escorted. They're those knights Kanye showed me, it can't be, Padme thought, hope beginning to blossom in her chest as they followed the woman who led them through the corridors of the building. I am sorry to hear about what has occurred to your people, Your Majesty. To have a group do that is horrid and must be stopped, Valen announced as she wooed the queen, as they made their way up a flight of stairs. Thank you, it has been a stressful series of events, Padme admitted as she looked at the knights in their armor, spying their saber staves and exotic armor. Kanye herself observed the woman she had not met, brown hair hidden behind a grey hood, and obvious to die for gorgeous figure under her garments. Who is she, Kanye thought as she sensed the obviously powerful woman through the Force, and nearly recoiled. Where did she come from? Eventually they came towards the final door at the end of the hallway, the knights stopping and moving to their posts as Valen turned to them both. He is inside, she stated as she opened the door and led them through. Padme observed the lavish office room, two sets of expensive couches surrounding a table, ornaments and sculptures on display cases at 4 points in the room. A single desk in the far corner of the room sat empty with a computer embedded into the desk. The room was lit with low orange lighting, V crystals hanging from the roof. The far wall from the containing dazed discs and hollows, as well as several other assortments, within he wall built shelves. And to their immediate left was what appeared to be a bar and balcony with a single figure standing looking far across the city at the Jedi Temple. Had noticed the figure seemed to be wearing white armor. It was as regal as it was impressive. Valkorian's armor from the trailers. Padme's eyes widened as the figure turned to them, the burning of her cheeks all talk aware to her, and thankfully hidden by the dim lights. May I introduce to you the Emperor of the Eternal Empire, His Majesty Knox and Valen, introduced as Padme nearly lost all air in her lungs. There's no way he's her father, he's too young, Padme thought as the ebony-haired man stepped forward for her to openly ogle a. Fluorescent blue eyes peered kindly at her, almost glowing in the dark as his young, handsome and chiseled features appealed to the young queen. His black hair swept back while two bangs hung beside the sides of his face. He stepped forward and offered his hand to Padme, who shook her head and took his hand, feeling the gentle touch it offered as they shook. It is my pleasure to meet you, milady. Kanye has told me much about you, Knox stated, his voice fine as silk as he guided them towards the couches of the room. The good, I hope. Kanye says you're her father. I apologize, but you look too youthful for such a thing, Padme asked to date a curiosity as the man laughed a joyous laugh. I assure you, I am older than I look. Genetics, I suppose. I have looked like this for quite some time, the man stated as he and Padme sat down opposite each other. Genetics, my pretty little butt, Padme thought as the man across from her motioned for something to drink, his gaze peering at her with curiosity. I've been told of your predicament, your majesty, and you have my sincerest apologies for what has occurred, Knox stated as Padme accepted a drink offered to her, and slowly drank from it. Yes, I loathe to admit it, but I am in desperate need of assistance. The Republic won't do anything in time. Kanye here has stated you might be able to help, and I humbly ask for your assistance. I am aware of your fighting force. Please lend me your help and I will do whatever it is you request. As payment, Padme physically withheld herself from groveling in the man's presence, as he took on a concerned look. Your people are in a great lot of turmoil. I'll help you in whatever way you need. Would you care to accompany me to Zakuul to personally oversee the forces which will be accompanying you in the defense of your home? Knox asked as Padme suddenly looked unsure, placing her drink slowly upon the table at which they sat. My entourage will be departing shortly to gather in defense of my home. I must depart with them, Padme reasoned as Knox nodded and took a drink from his own glass. Kanye will happily go in your place and report whatever happens. Your double should be able to accurately dictate any decisions that you make or ask Kanye to ask you personally. I also assure you that we will most likely arrive at Naboo before or just after your personal transport, so I insist, Knox soothed as Padme slowly looked at Kanye herself, easily noticing the look and nodding. I promise you, Padme, everything will be handled, and they will be safe. Father promises you help. I'll do my part, Kanye assured as Padme slowly sat back. If you can promise their safety in my absence, then I'll have to take then chance, Padme mumbled as Knox nodded. Kanye, you have your task. Please ensure it is completed with utmost importance, Knox ordered as Kanye bowed and made haste to leave. That girl, she's so eager to please she doesn't take time to relax, Knox mumbled as he relaxed and rolled his shoulders, his entire demeanor changing and appearing to become a different person. Please forgive my attitude earlier. I tend to handle professional business as it should be, professionally. Outside that, however, I live my life as I please. And I advise you to do the same. You'll stress too much, age quicker if you don't relax. Please be yourself, I understand, monarch to monarch what we must represent at times, but we shouldn't allow that to dictate who we are in our personal lives. Nobody is here to judge you. There are no cameras or reporters, just individuals who have similar experiences and know what it's like. So please be who and what you want to be when we aren't discussing something important. I've met too many who are always so high-strung and serious. Not my favorite people. Knox smiled at the girl as he stood, still stretching as his muscles popped. I'll take your words into consideration, thank you. Padme smiled slightly as she considered what he had stated. I'll prepare your ship at once, my lord, Tyrus bowed as Knox sighed. Always so serious, Knox rubbed his head as he made his exit from the room, towering over Padme, who followed behind him quietly. You're not what I thought you would be when Kanye mentioned you, Padme stated as she attempted small talk with the important figure accompanying her. Ha, and what did you think I'd be? Knox asked as he sent a small smile towards the queen. Old wise, gray hairs, Padme admitted as the man chuckled, Padme relaxing further in his presence, as he didn't take offense to her. I'd say I'm wise, though I do have much to learn as anyone does. And I sure as heck am glad to not have gray hairs, the man chortled as Padme herself, withheld a small giggle. Modest too, I see. Padme couldn't help herself as she commented. The warmth coming off of the man calming her nerves. Taking his advice. Surely it wouldn't hurt to be myself for once. Nobody is here to judge, and to see but a fellow monarch in a similar boat. My lord, we are ready to depart. Tyrus bowed as Valen walked onto the X-70B. Of course, Knox turned to Padme and offered his hand. Milady. Padme gave him her hand and playfully held the other over her mouth. Glad to see you're taking my advice, Knox commented as they entered the X-70. It'd be foolish not to take advice from such an esteemed ruler such as yourself, Padme responded as Knox snorted. I don't agree with this, Tifo stated as he walked with Kanye, the royal shuttle hurtling through space as they made their way to the Queen's double. It was the best course of action. Our enemies are sure the Queen is here. They'll be after us. She'll be more protected than the Chancellor, while she accompanies Father. They'll meet us at Naboo with help, Kanye told the security chief, who reluctantly saw her point as he grumbled. So we hold off everything they have until your father arrives. We need an army for that, Tifo confided in hopes of seeing her opinion. Isn't there already a warrior species on Naboo? Kanye replied as Tifo slowly saw to what she was saying, a small smile playing on his lips. This we should defer to the Queen. With this Tifo stated as they both chuckled and entered the Queen's solar. Padme couldn't help the dropping of her jaw. The strange method of travel deployed by the ship once in deep space had been the quickest mode of transport she had ever experienced. And now before her, a fleet of innumerable ships stationary in space in groups of 15. The ships covered the stars as far as she could see as they approached the planet below. You could take over the whole systems with a fleet like that, Padme stated as she turned to the relaxed man laying on a chair behind her, tossing grapes into his mouth. I could, but I don't want to. It's better to be loved than feared, I say, Obernik stated as he offered Padme a vine of grapes, who slowly accepted both the response and fruit. She felt an odd sensation prickle at their skin as they approached the planet, and Obernik himself noticed it. Interesting, Obernik commented as Padme turned to him in curiosity. What? Padme asked as she plopped a grape into her mouth and ate it. What you just felt was coming into proximity to a force nexus. And to experience any sensation from it, you must be at least initially receptive to the force. Padme may not be particularly strong in the force or sensitive to it in any meaningful degree. But I'd say you are at least receptive to it in the barest of ways. More than a civilian, but of course much less than someone who can actually use it, Obernik stated as he took her arm and showed her the tiny hairs on her arms standing on end. Had you been born here, I'm sure you would have been capable of using the force. Padme flushed under the contact before he slowly let go of her arm, hiding the blood rushing to her cheeks as she looked at the planet with towers visible above the atmosphere. It's beautiful, Padme mumbled to Obernik as the X-70 approached the Emperor's tower. She looked towards what appeared to be a cyclone in the southern hemisphere, and towards the red moon orbiting the planet. Is it a? It has nothing to the open fields of Naboo and the plainlands. But it does have its own beauty, Obernik said as the young girl looked at the towering spires. Dang, time to be professional again, Obernik mumbled as Padme giggled lightly as they landed. The Gungans, they had been hard to find, but with the help of the creature Jar Jar, they had located the warrior species of the planet. It had been even harder to get them to agree to help, but they had agreed to assist thanks to Lady Kanye persuading them, and now here we are, sneaking through this blasted city with a bunch of rebels to get to the palace, Obi-Wan thought as they snuck around a corner, waiting for the mounted speeder to fire upon the Federation tank in front of them. Obi-Wan watched as the speeder across the way fired upon the tank, destroying it in the process, as the droid's attention was drawn away from the royal party towards the rebels. Let's go, Sabe ordered as they crept past the droids and through the blast doors to the corridors of the hangar. Anakin, stay close, Qui-Gon ordered as they ran into a hangar and opened fire upon the droids within. To your ship, Sabe yelled out as the pilots followed the Queen's double orders and took to the fighters, flying off into the atmosphere as they lost a few shots via Federation tanks from the ground. With the fighters now in the air, the royal party went to move on to their second target, however they were stopped by Kanye, who raised her hand as they stood in front of a set of closed blast doors. He's right behind it, she relayed as the Jedi's eyes widened. Anakin, we split up here. Go with the Queen, Qui-Gon ordered as Anakin went to stand next to Sabe. We'll take the long way, Tifo mumbled as the blast doors began to open. As you will, Qui-Gon responded as he and Obi-Wan ignited their lightsabers, the black robes individuals staring at them menacingly. With their parts done, the royal party split from the Jedi and departed. The Sith slowly pulled out his lightsaber before igniting the double blades weapon and went to engage the Jedi. Your Majesty, Kanye jogged to a stop beside Sabe. I must split from you. Kanye didn't offer any more as Sabe nodded her head, while Kanye took off in the direction they came from. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon were hard pressed against the Sith. The aggressive form of the individual successfully batting off both Jedi knocked Qui-Gon to the side and into a pillar as Kenobi was kicked to the side. The Sith leapt back to the edge of the generator rooms, platform. Blue beams of energy flowing vertically in the background as the Sith growled. The Sith backflipped to an adjacent platform with the Jedi following, now noticing the fourth individual entering the generator room as she calmly approached, lightsaber in hand as his presence was muted. The deflector shield's too strong, a goggled pilot yelled through comms as they battled the vulture droids and command ship in space. The tiny fighters they were in being picked off one by one. What are we going to do? A female pilot asked in fear as she fired upon another droid fighter. Please tell me this wouldn't have been your idea, Obernik asked as they dropped out of a gate aboard the Eternity. Nox himself deciding the subjugation would have had the opposite effect of what he wanted to achieve, a small armada of fleet vessels behind them, still cloaked as they approached the battle station. Those fighters are all the Naboo have. We're a peaceful people, Padme admitted, embarrassed but fearful as she watched her people battle the humongous orb-like ship. There's a difference between being peaceful and being prepared, Obernik offered the Queen his advice as they stood in the Eternity's bridge. I'll take that into consideration, Padme responded as the display showed the cloaked fleet vessels pulling ahead of them ready to engage. Pull your people out, they don't need to see this, Obernik stated as Padme did what she was told, accessing a nearby terminal to relay her message. This is Queen Amidala. All Nabooian fighters are to withdraw back to Thebe Palace and help with the ground battle. The Queen's voice rang over the speakers of every fighter in orbit, catching many off guard, but following her orders without question as they broke formation and dropped through the atmosphere. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from an unknown source," a Neimoidian stated as he looked towards his higher-up within the battleship control room. "Put it through." The alien responded as a man shimmered into existence on screen. "Pull all your forces away from Naboo at once or be destroyed. This is your one warning," the young man ordered as he gazed at them with an emotionless face. "Though are you to challenge us, we were promised this system in reward for the crimes your people committed against our viceroy when he was in the palace," the general stated with anger in his voice. "Interesting. Still, I take it you refuse?" the young man asked as he got the affirmative from the Neimoidians. "Very well, prepared to be eradicated." "I'm sorry, Padme, we tried. Now it's time for action," Obernik said as Padme nodded sadly as the fleet warship surrounded the battleship before decloaking. "Fire when ready," Obernik stated as the female-esque droid behind him eyes glowed for a second. Padme watched as a green haze surrounded the formation surrounding the battleships, obviously building towards something as one by one the formations took on this haze. "That ship has exceptional shields. What are they doing?" Padme inquired as Obernik looked to Naboo. "Shields can only take so much before faltering. The ships are drawing power from each other to focus on the center vessel. I assure you that ship is as good as gone." Fire, Obernik ordered as the first formation let loose a green beam of energy that struck the opposing battleship, causing the ship's shields to flicker, before the second repeated the process, followed by many afterwards. The battle of Force users continued their battle across the generator room's walkways, both GD on both sides of Maul, as they attempted to get a strike through his guard, the assassins expertly blocking each strike with easy as he mocked them. The Sith knocked Obi-Wan off of the platform with a kick to the chest to another walkway stories below, before he himself was knocked down by Qui-Gon himself, thanks to a backhand to the head. Qui-Gon leapt down to the red-skinned Sith's level, intending to split the Sith in half, but was unsuccessful as the Sith rolled to the side, jumping to his feet and locking blades with Qui-Gon once more, the Sith leading Qui-Gon down the walkway to a red-shielded set of doorways. Obi-Wan himself pulled himself up from dangling from the platform he was on before he leapt from the platform below up to their own, and ran to catch up with his master, the two now battling through the open hallway, before the red shields engaged and separated the three of them. Obi-Wan himself making it halfway through the shielded walkway before he too was stopped by their activation. "No, I don't think this will do at all." Obi-Wan's eyes widened as he turned to look at Kanye, who stood at the entrance to the shielded walkway. "What are you doing here? Leave, you're in danger," Obi-Wan stated as he grew even more worried. "I don't think so," she retorted before making a crushing gesture with her hands. The hallway they stood in shaking as the two immediate closest shields sputtered and disengaged as they were torn from the wall and tossed to the side. "I apologize for lying earlier," Kanye stated to Obi-Wan's confusion, only for it to double as Kanye activated a yellow-bladed lightsaber and stated walking forward, the next two shields being torn from the wall in the same process. "Young lady, you have a lot of explaining to do," Qui-Gon quipped as he noted the Sith become more and more agitated at a relentless approach. Qui-Gon began to meditate as he waited for the shields to disengage, the Sith pacing back and forward as he got angrier and angrier. Of nowhere the shields disengaged, Qui-Gon and the Sith resuming their battle as Obi-Wan and Kanye took a dead sprint to join. Kanye herself hefted her lightsaber to the side before tossing it, the weapon sawing through the air in a circular blur. The Sith was caught off guard when the weapon sliced through his shoulder blade, nearly removing his arm from his shoulder, as at the last second the shield separated the group once more. "Give me but a second," Kanye stated as the room shook once more, the shields torn from the walls, and dropped into the shaft in front of them. Obi-Wan intercepted a killing blow meant for Qui-Gon, breathing a sigh of relief as the GD Master stumbled to catch his breath. "You can't with Sith," Kanye stated as she slashed at the ground with her lightsaber as it spun. The Sith looked at Obi-Wan as he held his lightsaber, standing beside the woman with Qui-Gon slowly coming to stand on her other side. With a growl the Sith leapt at Kanye, the woman hefting her weapon, crashing her lightsaber against the Zabrax. Qui-Gon moved behind the Sith and attempted to slash at him from behind the Sith, shifting himself to block both weapons, before he was kicked across the shaft by Obi-Wan. "As I told you, you're outmatched," Kanye stated as the Sith stood to his feet and hefted his lightsaber and leapt across the gap, arms wide, lightsaber above his head. The Sith's eyes widened as Obi-Wan crossed his path, the Sith grunting mid-air as his upper and lower half separated and tumbled into the depths below. "Good riddance," Kanye mumbled as she deactivated her lightsaber and placed it on her belt. "So not trained," Obi-Wan stated as he deactivated his own blade, running a hand through his hair. "Not by the groups you were implying when you asked. On my homeworld, we have an order of Force sensitives that use the Force for justice, not the light or dark. I trained under them in the ways of the Force and blade," Kanye explained cryptically as Qui-Gon squinted, not knowing what to make of her answer, but deciding to give her the benefit of the doubt, after sending no negative emotions from the woman towards them. "I believe the Queen is in need of assistance," Obi-Wan announced as they decided to make their way back to the palace. The battleship was nothing but shards in the sky, the Queen announcing that she people had been the ones to destroy and bring victory to their planet. All records of the space battle had been destroyed with the battleship. Viceroy Newt Gunray had been taken off-world as Boss Nass conversed with the Queen. The celebration was well underway as the people flocked the streets with the Gungans. The Jedi and Kanye stood at Padme's side with Anakin in front of Qui-Gon and a newly knighted Obi-Wan. Kanye herself had been left alone by the Jedi due to how much backlash would have been caused by interrogating the woman due to the Queen's protection, plus being vouched for by Qui-Gon, and Obi-Wan himself had helped. On the opposite side of Padme stood Palpatine as Boss Nass approached. Receiving a glowing orb from the Gungan held by the Queen as the people went haywire, streams and fireworks going off in the distance. Padme herself along with Kanye and Anakin looked towards a balcony in the distance, all three smiling at Obernik as he nodded and turned to leave the planet. Questions for you, I have, Yoda asked as he stood next to Kanye propped against his walking stick as he waved at the masses below. Another time, later after the celebrations, Kanye responded as the Grand Master nodded happily.